What if your mentor spent 6 months planning to steal your life's work, then waited for you to be paralyzed in a car accident to actually do it? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. I'm Marcus, 26, software developer in Seattle, and this is my story. Friday evening, 6:37 p.m. at O'Malley's Bar, 3 blocks from the office. The place had this permanent smell of spilled beer and fried food that somehow felt comforting after a long week of coding. I was sitting across from James, my mentor of 4 years, nursing our usual post-work beers. The foam on his Guinness was doing that slow dissolve thing, while I fidgeted with my phone, trying to work up the nerve to show him what I'd been building in secret for 3 years. "All right, Uncle James." I finally said that's what he always wanted me to call him. Some weird power dynamic thing that I thought was endearing at the time. "You ready to see what your favorite nephew's been cooking up?" I turned my phone toward him, swiping through the final beta version of Logiflow. My hands were actually shaking a little. 3 years of my life, right there on that 5-inch screen. Every late night, every skipped social event, every, sorry, can't make it, text to friends, all for this AI-powered logistics platform that could predict supply chain disruptions 72 hours in advance. James's eyes lit up as he scrolled through the interface, like genuinely lit up, the way they did when he talked about his Stanford days or his almost IPO from the 90s. "Marcus, holy shit," he said, and James never cursed unless he was impressed. "This island, this is revolutionary. The predictive algorithm alone could be worth millions." Looking back, this should have been my first red flag. James had never shown this much enthusiasm for anything I'd done before. "November 15th, I said, pulling up my calendar app to show him the date circled in red. "That's launch day. Already got 3 companies lined up for the pilot program." James raised his beer. "To Uncle James's favorite nephew, changing the world." We clinked glasses, and he held the toast a beat too long, staring at me over his pint. Then he said something odd. "You've really trusted me with everything here, haven't you? Every single line of code?" I laughed it off. "Well, yeah, you're basically family, right?" But something in his tone stuck with me, even through the buzz of my second beer. The following Monday, 9:15 a.m., I was deep in debugging mode, trying to figure out why this recursive function kept throwing Stack Overflow errors when James appeared at my cubicle with coffee. This was unusual. James never brought coffee for anyone. He had this whole thing about everyone handles their own caffeine addiction. "Thought you could use the good stuff," he said, setting down a cup from the bougie place across the street. $7 cortado. "Debugging that nightmare function? 2SS. I took a sip, surprised he even knew what I was working on. "Yeah, it's being a real pain. The recursion depth shouldn't be hitting the limit, but..." "Show me," he said, pulling up a chair way too close to mine. Personal space was never James's strong suit, but this felt different. Intimate, almost. As I walked him through the code, he started asking increasingly specific questions about Logiflow's architecture. Not general mentorship questions, detailed stuff about my proprietary prediction algorithm, the specific machine learning models I was using, how the data pipeline processed real-time shipping information. "You know what would really help me understand?" James said, leaning back in the chair he'd stolen from Patricia's empty desk. "If I could see your whole setup, like your home server where you're running the actual training models." I should have hesitated, should have thought about it for even a second. But this was James, the guy who'd gotten me this job, who'd covered for me when I screwed up the Peterson account, who called me his favorite nephew. So I opened TeamViewer and gave him a full tour of my apartment's server setup, the beautiful little cluster I'd built in my spare bedroom. "This is incredible," he said, taking out his phone. "Mind if I grab some photos? I'm trying to set up something similar for my side project, and your cable management is just..." He did a chef's kiss gesture. The audacity of this man was absolutely mind-blowing, thinking back on it now. He even asked for read-only access to my GitHub repository. "Just want to study your code structure," he said. "Learn from the best student I've ever had." I gave it to him, just like that. Even showed him the sticky note next to my monitor where I'd written my server password, well, part of it. The last 4 characters were my birth year, which he obviously knew. 2 weeks passed now, we're at October 28th, 7:43 p.m. I remember the exact time because my dash clock was the last normal thing I saw before everything went sideways. I was driving home from another late night, finalizing investor presentations for the November launch. The roads were slick from that weird, not quite rain Seattle mist, and I was thinking about whether to order Thai or just eat leftover pizza again. The drunk driver came from my left, blowing through the red light at 5th and Morrison doing at least 50. I saw the headlights and had maybe half a second to think, "Oh fuck," before trying to swerve right. Didn't matter. The impact hit my driver's side door with this sickening crunch of metal that I can still hear when I close my eyes. The world went white, then black, then white again. I remember fragments. The airbags smell like burnt chemicals. Someone yelling, "Don't move him." The taste of blood in my mouth. Then I was in an ambulance, and someone was saying words that didn't make sense. Possible spinal injury. Can't feel below the impact point. Need his emergency contact. My phone was cracked but somehow still working. The EMT used my thumb to unlock it. I tried to tell her the passcode but couldn't make words happen. 17 missed calls from James. How did he even know? She called him back, putting it on speaker. Through the morphine haze, God. Morphine is weird. Like being underwater but warm. I heard James's voice. I'm his emergency contact. Yes, I'll handle everything. His apartment, his cat, his work stuff, everything. Just save him, okay? I tried to say something about my launch date, about Logiflow, about the presentations I still needed to finish. But the words wouldn't come out. The EMT was saying something about surgery, about critical time windows, and then they put something over my face, and the world disappeared again. The last thing I remember thinking was that at least James would take care of Schrödinger, my cat. Funny what your brain focuses on when you're potentially dying, right? I had no idea that while I was going under for emergency surgery, my mentor was already planning to steal 3 years of my life. I woke up November 2nd, 11:23 a.m. in the ICU. Everything was beeping. Like, literally everything. Heart monitor, IV pump, some machine I couldn't even identify. The doctor, this exhausted-looking woman who couldn't have been much older than me, explained the damage in that carefully neutral voice they must teach in medical school. 3 fractured vertebrae. Temporary paralysis from the waist down. Minimum 3 months recovery if I was lucky, and that was assuming everything went perfectly with physical therapy. I remember staring at the ceiling tiles while she talked, counting the little holes in them because focusing on her words made everything too real. James was there when I finally turned my head. He was holding my hand, and I swear to God there were actual tears in his eyes. "Don't worry about anything," he said, squeezing my fingers. "I've got your apartment handled. Fed Schrödinger twice a day, even gave him those expensive treats you hide on top of the fridge. Watered your plants too. That succulent on your desk was looking pretty rough." The pain medication made everything feel like it was happening through frosted glass, but I managed to ask about my server. The words came out slurred. "The home lab. Still running. Still humming along," James assured me, pulling up a chair. "I didn't touch anything important, just made sure it stays running. Your electric bill's gonna be insane, by the way." Who jokes about electric bills when their mentee is paralyzed? This guy, apparently. He showed me his phone, dozens of messages from colleagues, everyone asking about me, but I couldn't focus on the screen. The morphine made the words swim around like drunk ants. James mentioned he'd been checking my work email too, keeping your inbox clean so you don't stress. "Set up forwarding," he said, showing me something on his laptop that I couldn't quite process. Just the boring stuff, HR newsletters, company-wide announcements, nothing important. Everything project-related stays in your inbox for when you're back. I wanted to object. Some instinct in my drug-addled brain was screaming that this was wrong, but the pain was spiking again, and the nurse was already adjusting my IV. James stayed until visiting hours ended at 8 p.m., promising to check the apartment again tomorrow. I realized I couldn't feel my legs and forgot, momentarily, about everything else. November 15th, 2:14 p.m., the day I was supposed to launch Logiflow, the day circled in red on my calendar, the day that 3 years of work was supposed to pay off. I was still in the hospital, now able to sit up but nowhere near walking. They'd moved me from the ICU to a regular room, which sounds like progress, until you realize it just means you're stable enough to be miserable without constant supervision. My legs were these useless things under the blanket, like they belonged to someone else. James visited with his tablet, wearing that concerned expression he'd perfected over the past 2 weeks. "You're not going to believe this," he said, pulling up a chair. "I didn't want to show you this, but you'd find out anyway." He turned the screen toward me. TechCrunch article. Fresh that morning. ChainPredict launches revolutionary AI logistics platform. My heart rate monitor actually started beeping faster. The nurse later asked if I'd had a panic attack. The interface in the screenshots looked eerily familiar. Not identical. They'd changed the color scheme from my blue gradient to some ugly orange thing, but the layout, the data visualization, even the fucking button placements were mine. The founder was listed as some Delaware LLC registered 2 weeks ago, right after my accident. "This has to be connected somehow," James said, his face this perfect mask of concern. "Maybe someone at the bar overheard us? You were showing me everything on your phone that night." I still can't believe he had the nerve to reference that night, knowing what he'd done. My mind was racing, but the pain medication made everything fuzzy, like trying to think through cotton. The algorithm, I managed to say. Check if they're using my prediction algorithm. Already did, James said, scrolling to another article. They're being vague about the technical details, but... He paused, and I should have recognized that practiced hesitation. It sounds similar, really similar. He offered to investigate, mentioned he still had access to my GitHub to check for any unauthorized access. Don't worry, he promised, squeezing my shoulder with that same hand that had been stealing my work. We'll figure out who did this. I've got your back, nephew. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again. The way he wouldn't make eye contact when he said it, how his hand was just a little too warm, too sweaty. November 20th, 4:36 p.m. My physical therapist, this aggressively cheerful guy named Brad, was teaching me to wiggle my toes. Apparently, that's a huge achievement when you're partially paralyzed. When my roommate Jake burst in, looking like he'd sprinted from the parking lot. Jake worked in venture capital, one of those guys who wore Allbirds and Patagonia vests unironically, but was actually brilliant at spotting bullshit. He looked uncomfortable, kept fidgeting with his phone. Dude, I need to tell you something weird, he started, glancing at Brad, who got the hint and excused himself. I was at a pitch event last night. That one at the Pioneer Square, WeWork? I knew the one. I'd planned to attend it myself, before the accident. James was there, Jake continued. He was presenting something that looked exactly like what you showed me last month. Like, not similar, exactly the same, just reskinned. My blood turned to ice. Actually turned to ice. I could feel it in my veins, this cold spreading from my chest. What did he call it? Chain predict. Jake showed me a photo he'd snapped discreetly from the back of the room. James on stage, confident as hell, pointing at slides showing my interface. My data models. My 3 years of sleepless nights. He said he'd been working on it for 2 years in stealth mode. I immediately asked for my laptop, which Jake had brought from the apartment per my text. My hands were shaking as I logged into GitHub. The repository was empty, completely wiped. Not just deleted, overwritten with empty commits, then deleted, making recovery impossible. The commit history showed a mass deletion on November 1st at 3:47 a.m. while I was unconscious, post-surgery. But that was impossible. James only had read-only access. Unless I remote accessed my server logs, my fingers flying across the keyboard despite the numbness in my arms. Someone had accessed my apartment's home server physically on November 1st, 3rd, and 5th. The access logs showed root-level changes, complete database exports, the works. Jake, I said, my voice weirdly calm considering the tsunami of rage building inside me. James didn't just have my spare key. He had everything. He fucking took everything while I was dying. Jake stared at me. We need to call the police. With what proof? I laughed, but it came out bitter. He was smart about it, just different enough to claim parallel development. That's when I realized this wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was planned. The bastard had been planning this for months. November 25th, 9:07 a.m. I was in my wheelchair for morning rehab. Yeah, I'd graduated to a wheelchair. Big achievement when Jennifer walked in, James's wife. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun that suggested she'd stopped caring about appearances. I need to tell you something, she said, closing the door behind her. Her hands were shaking. James doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm at my sister's for Thanksgiving prep. She pulled out her phone, fumbling with it like she was afraid it might explode. I recorded this at the hospital cafe while you were in surgery. He was drunk, you know how he gets after 3 whiskeys. She hit play, and James's slurred voice filled the room. Even through the phone's tinny speaker, I could hear the bar noise in the background, the clink of glasses. The kid's brilliant, but naive. 3 years of work just sitting there on an unsecured server. He literally gave me the keys. There was a pause, the sound of him taking another drink. Once this acquisition goes through, we're set for life, Jen. Early retirement, that house in Tahoe you wanted. He'll never be able to prove anything from a hospital bed. The recording kept going. James laughing about how I'd shown him everything, trusted him completely. Called me Uncle James, he slurred, like I was family. Made it so much easier. Jennifer was crying now, actual tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was until I heard him on the phone with investors yesterday, using your exact pitch deck. Word for word, Marcus. Even the typo on slide 17 where you wrote predicitive instead of predictive. Looking back, this should have been the moment I felt vindicated, but all I felt was hollow. She reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. From his home office, she said, pressing it into my hand. I thought you should have it. It's everything. He documented everything. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? Because 20 years ago, I married someone who wanted to change the world, she said, not someone who'd steal from a kid in a hospital bed. And because, she paused, looking at the door. This isn't his first time. There were others before you. The USB drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand. December 3rd, 10:15 a.m. My hospital room had transformed into a makeshift legal war room. My lawyer, Sarah Chen Jake, had insisted on her, said she'd eaten bigger fish than James for breakfast, was reviewing everything spread across my overbed table. It's compelling, she said, adjusting her glasses. The recording, the server logs, the GitHub history. But James was smart. He modified just enough to claim parallel development. See these changes? She pulled up a side-by-side comparison on her laptop. Different variable names, restructured functions, altered UI flow. A judge might see coincidence, not theft. But then I plugged in Jennifer's USB drive, and everything changed. The first file was a keystroke logger output. Dates going back to June, every single keystroke from my work laptop, time-stamped and categorized. James had installed it during what he called a routine security update that he'd insisted on doing personally. I remembered that day he'd bought me lunch to get me out of the office. I'm sitting there scrolling through my own passwords, my private Slack messages to Jake about the project, my email drafts to potential investors that I never sent. The audacity of this man was absolutely mind-blowing. He'd been reading my diary for 6 months. Holy shit, Sarah said, and Sarah never cursed. Look at this. She'd found the folder labeled Patents. James had filed provisional patents for key components of Logiflow 3 weeks before my accident. The documentation was my own design docs, screenshots from our debugging sessions, even code comments with my initials still in them. He'd just done a find and replace on my name. Then came the email folder. James had been talking to VCs since August, using my financial projections, my market analysis, my competitive research. He'd scheduled meetings during times he knew I'd be coding late. One email thread showed him telling an investor, "My protege is brilliant but lacks business sense. When the time is right, I'll bring you something special." The time was right? When I was fucking paralyzed? There's more, Sarah said, her voice tight. Look at the calendar. October 27th, the day before my accident. James had scheduled a meeting with a patent attorney for November 2nd while I was unconscious. Another with major VCs on November 5th. A soft launch event for November 14th. He knew, I said, the words coming out strangled. He knew I'd be out of commission. Sarah looked at me carefully. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully. Is there any chance at all, that James could have known about your accident in advance? The room went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that this level of planning, these specific dates. She pulled up another document. He incorporated Chain Predicts LLC 2 hours after your accident. Not the next day, 2 hours after. Who does incorporation paperwork at midnight unless they're expecting something? December 10th, 6:45 p.m. Against medical advice, I checked myself out of the hospital. I could use a walker now barely, and every step felt like glass in my spine, but I could move. Jake and 2 developer friends, Amy and Carlos, had agreed to help me execute what Sarah called legally inadvisable but emotionally satisfying. Chain Predict was having its official launch party at the Marriott downtown. Black tie, investors, tech press, the works. James had even hired the same event company I'd planned to use for Logiflow's launch. The invitation Jake had snagged showed my original tagline, predicting tomorrow, today. I wasn't on the guest list, obviously, but Jennifer was waiting at the side entrance, wearing a black dress like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. "He's 3 drinks in already," she said, leading us through the service corridor. "Full presentation starts in 10 minutes. By the way, if you're hooked on this disaster, hit subscribe because what happens next is better than any revenge fantasy you've ever had." The ballroom was packed. 200 people, minimum. I recognized half the Seattle tech scene, 3 journalists I'd been courting for months, and at least a dozen VCs. James was on stage doing mic checks, wearing the same lucky tie he'd worn to my job interview 4 years ago. Jake wheeled me to the AV booth where his contact in event production was waiting. "You got 5 minutes before the presentation starts," the guy said. "Whatever you're doing, make it count." I pulled out my laptop, connecting it to their system. Amy and Carlos flanked me like bodyguards. The pain in my back was screaming, but adrenaline is one hell of a drug. James started his presentation. 4 years ago, I began a journey in solitude, working nights and weekends to solve a problem that had plagued logistics for decades. I opened the first file, 3 years of Git commits with my name, every single one time-stamped and verified. The screens behind James flickered. Technical difficulties, James laughed, but his voice cracked. As I was saying, the screens changed again. Date-stamped photos from my apartment, my whiteboard covered in equations, my server setup, then the emails, the patents with filing dates, the keystroke logs. James turned to look at the screen behind him just as Jennifer's recording started playing. His drunk voice echoed through the ballroom. The kid's brilliant, but naive. 3 years of work just sitting there on an unsecured server. The room went dead silent, 200 people watching James's face drain of color as his own voice continued. He'll never be able to prove anything from a hospital bed. I rolled myself out from behind the AV booth, making eye contact with James across the room. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, which I guess in a way he had. The recording kept playing. The investors started murmuring, then talking, then some started walking out. One VC I recognized, Samantha from Emergence Capital, was already on her phone with legal. James grabbed the mic. This is taken out of context. This is karma, I said into my wireless mic, my voice carrying through the speakers. And it's a bitch, Uncle James. December 15th, 2:30 p.m., in a law office conference room that smelled like leather and vindication. The aftermath had unfolded faster than a startup burning through VC money. Within 3 hours of the party, James's investors had pulled out completely. Every single one. Turns out nobody wants to fund a company built on stolen code and attempted murder speculation. Sarah had assembled the other victims, victims, plural. Raj Patel, from India, sitting there in a Berkeley hoodie, looking tired but satisfied. Lin Zhang, from China, wearing this expression I recognized. The specific flavor of rage you only get from having your life's work stolen. They'd found them through Jennifer's USB drive, buried in folders labeled previous acquisitions. He did the same thing to me in 2017, Raj said, pulling up his laptop. I was on an H-1B visa, couldn't afford to fight back. He took my machine learning framework, sold it to Microsoft for $2 million. I got nothing. Lynn's story was worse. 2019, she'd developed a revolutionary compression algorithm as her PhD thesis. James had been her industry advisor. She'd gone back to Beijing after he'd threatened to report her for academic dishonesty if she challenged him. We always hoped someone would expose him, Raj said, looking at me. Someone American, someone who couldn't be threatened with deportation. I still can't believe this man had a whole system for choosing victims, international students, and young developers without resources to fight back. The real twist came when ChainPredict's CTO, David Park, walked in. I'd never met him, but I recognized the exhaustion in his eyes, the same look I'd had after 72-hour coding sessions. I have Slack messages, he said without preamble, sliding a printed stack across the table. James bragging about the theft, direct quotes about taking your code while you were drooling on himself in the ICU. The messages were devastating. James discussing my medical condition like a business opportunity, calculating how long I'd be incapacitated, even joking about whether I'd wake up retarded and unable to challenge him. Who says things like that? Who even thinks them? The settlement came together in 48 hours. James's lawyers knew they were fucked. The evidence was overwhelming. The PR disaster, unsurvivable. The terms, complete transfer of ChainPredict's assets to me, $3.7 million in damages, and the cherry on top, a lifetime ban from the tech industry. Any violation would trigger an additional $10 million penalty. Sarah also got the FBI interested in that accident timing issue. While they couldn't prove James orchestrated the drunk driver, they found something else. He'd been tracking my phone location for months through a spoofed Find My Friends request. He knew my exact route home, my timing, everything. Not enough for attempted murder charges, but enough to destroy any remaining credibility. 3 months after the settlement, I properly launched Logiflow. My legs were working again, not perfect. I still had bad days, but I could stand at my own launch party. We formed a company with equal ownership. Me, Raj, Lynn, and David, who'd quit ChainPredict in disgust after the revelation. Our first office was on the 42nd floor of the Rainier Tower, the same floor where James used to work. His old corner office became mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. The view was spectacular. You could see all of Seattle, including the intersection where my accident happened. I kept the office exactly as James had left it, except for one addition. A framed photo from the hospital, me in that wheelchair at the Marriott, watching James's world collapse. Jennifer divorced him within a month. She sent me a card last Christmas that just said, "Thank you for the recording." My lawyer loved it. She got everything in the divorce, the house, the cars, even his vintage computing collection he'd spent decades building. James himself? Last I heard, he was working at his brother-in-law's accounting firm in Spokane, doing basic bookkeeping. He sent me one text, 6 months after everything. I'm sorry. The worst part isn't even that James stole Logiflow, it's that he called Marcus nephew while doing it, made him feel like family, then waited for him to be at his most vulnerable to strike. 3 years of Marcus's work gone while he was learning to wiggle his toes again. And James's quote about him drooling on himself in the ICU? That's not just theft, that's dehumanization. At least Marcus got his revenge and then some. But how many other nephews did James destroy who never got justice? The tech world is full of these mentorship horror stories, but they're usually about careers, not near-death experiences. Though speaking of careers being destroyed, the office mom I'm about to tell you about took a very different approach. She kept a color-coded spreadsheet of everyone's weaknesses, green for mild leverage, yellow for moderate, red for career ending, and she'd been doing it for 30 years. Yeah, I discovered this about our office mom. I'm Sophie, 24, and this is how I exposed Margaret Brennan's cookie conspiracy. Monday morning, 8:23 a.m. in the break room of Whitman, Sterling & Associates, a prestigious law firm on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan high-rise. The kind of place where the coffee costs more than minimum wage and everyone's trying to out-lawyer each other even during lunch breaks. I was Sophie Chen, 24 years old, 6 months into my first real job as a junior paralegal, still getting used to wearing heels that made my feet scream by noon. Margaret Brennan was already there, arranging her famous cookies on these vintage china plates she kept in the office. Actual spode blue Italian, she'd told me once, inherited from her grandmother. The smell hit you the second you walked in. Brown butter, sea salt, that perfect caramelized sugar edge that made your mouth water even if you'd just eaten breakfast. Sophie, dear, you look exhausted, Margaret said, pressing a still warm cookie into my hand before I could even set down my bag. Her hands were soft, moisturized with that rose-scented cream she kept on her desk. Tell me everything, and I did. God help me. I spilled it all, my roommate Sarah's drama with her boyfriend, my $73,000 in student loans, even my secret plan to retake the LSATs next year, because being a paralegal wasn't the endgame. Margaret listened with those warm brown eyes, occasionally touching my hand, making these little sympathetic noises that made me feel heard in a way my own mother never managed. You're so brave, handling all this at your age, she said, and I actually teared up a little. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag. Who gets that emotional over workplace cookies? Associates started filtering in for their Monday cookie tradition. Brad Morrison, Jennifer Wu, Michael Hendricks all gravitating toward Margaret like planets to the sun, each taking their usual spot around her like it was assigned seating at group therapy. That's when I noticed something odd. Margaret's phone was face up on the counter, and the voice memo app was running. The little red recording bar was pulsing. When I glanced at it, she smoothly flipped it over. Oh, that's just my grocery list app, she laughed. That grandmother laugh that made you feel silly for noticing. I talk to myself sometimes. Old lady things. But I'd seen the timer. 47 minutes and counting. 3 weeks later, Tuesday afternoon, 2:47 p.m. I was covering reception while our regular girl was at lunch, trying to look professional while secretly reading Above the Law on my phone, when I heard Brad Morrison in the hallway. His voice was cracking. This 32-year-old Harvard law grad was nearly in tears. I don't understand, he was saying to Jennifer Wu, his voice echoing off the marble walls. My billables were perfect, 2,200 hours. My clients love me. The Pembroke acquisition alone should have sealed it. He didn't make partner. Again. 3rd year in a row. Jennifer was making those same sympathetic noises Margaret made, but I could see her face from my desk. She looked relieved. She'd made partner last month, and she was one of the few who always had meetings during Monday cookie time. I remembered Brad in the break room just last month, stress-eating Margaret's snickerdoodles while telling her about his Xanax prescription. Sometimes I take an extra one on bad days. He'd admitted, powdered sugar on his tie. Don't tell anyone, but the anxiety is killing me. Margaret had rubbed his shoulder, promised it would stay between them. That afternoon, I started making a mental list. Brad was the 4th senior associate this year who didn't make partner. Derek Zhao, Patricia Summers, Rajesh Patel, now Brad. All of them were Margaret's cookie kids, the ones who spent every Monday morning in her unofficial therapy sessions, sharing their deepest fears over baked goods. Meanwhile, the associates who kept their distance from Margaret, the ones she called too uptight for their own good, or poor things who don't know how to accept help, seemed to advance without issue. Jennifer Wu, Thomas Park from IT, Miranda Chen, no relation to me, from tax law, they all made partner or senior positions. The pattern was so obvious once I saw it that I actually said, "Holy shit," out loud. The receptionist returning from lunch gave me a look. Looking back, this should have been my wake-up call. Success at the firm seemed inversely proportional to Margaret's affection. The more she mothers you, the more your career withers. But I was 24 and stupid, and those cookies were really fucking good. The following Monday, 9:05 a.m., I arrived early, planning to grab coffee from the good machine on 43 before the cookie gathering. But the elevators were being serviced, so I took the stairs. The stairwell door to our floor opened right next to the break room, and Margaret's voice floated through the doorway. She wasn't alone. I peered through the crack in the door and saw her adding something to the cookie dough. A small white bottle. I could just make out the label, L-theanine, 500 milligrams. She was emptying capsules directly into the mix, breaking them open one by one with practiced efficiency. When she saw me, she actually jumped. "Oh, honey, you scared me. Just adding my secret ingredient, vanilla extract." She held up a vanilla bottle that had definitely not been in her hand 3 seconds ago. But I saw the capsules. I saw the powder dissolving into the dough she was folding with those grandmother hands. During cookie time, I watched everything differently. Margaret asked her probing questions. "How's that pro bono case going, Jennifer?" Jennifer wasn't there, claimed she had a client call. "Any updates on your father's surgery, Michael?" Michael's eyes went soft, unfocused, as he described his dad's colon cancer in detail. I'm pretty sure he didn't mean to share. Everyone who ate the cookies started talking more. Words flowed like water, like wine, like secrets they'd kept for years. Patricia started crying about her infertility treatments. Derek confessed he'd been interviewing at rival firm. Brad, poor broken Brad, admitted he'd thought about jumping from this very building last week. Who admits that over cookies? Seriously, who does that? I pretended to eat mine, made appreciative noises while wrapping it in a napkin. I stayed clear-headed while everyone else seemed almost drunk on conversation, on confession, on the warm maternal comfort of Margaret's presence. Her phone was always nearby, screen dark but positioned perfectly, like a snake waiting to strike. "You're awfully quiet today, dear," Margaret said, those brown eyes fixed on me. "Not enjoying the cookies?" Her tone was sweet as brown butter, but her eyes were calculating the way a cat watches a mouse. "Just savoring them," I lied, the wrapped cookie burning a hole in my pocket. "They're perfect." She smiled, but it didn't reach those warm brown eyes anymore. 2 days later, Wednesday, 11:30 p.m., I was alone in the office, working late on a brief that didn't really need to be finished until Friday, but I couldn't stop thinking about those capsules. The building was tomb quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional ding of the elevator down the hall. I googled L-theanine on my phone, not the work computer. I wasn't that stupid. Turns out it's completely legal, just an amino acid found in tea leaves. Promotes relaxation, reduces anxiety, and when combined with sugar and the warmth of human connection, makes people more open, more talkative, more likely to share things they'd normally keep locked up tighter than client files. Not illegal, but definitely, absolutely, completely unethical. I started cross-referencing in my head. Every single associate who didn't make partner had a check-in meeting with Margaret the week before partnership decisions. She'd invite them for coffee in her office, concerned about their stress levels, wanting to make sure they were okay. Brad had mentioned his meeting, said Margaret seemed worried about him, kept asking if he was really ready for the pressure of partnership. The pattern was so clear, I wanted to scream. But first, I needed proof. I started digging through the firm's shared drive, using my paralegal access to look for anything odd. Most of it was standard case files, billing records, the world's most boring HR newsletters. But at 1:17 a.m., after clicking through 17 nested folders with names like office supplies-inventory-archives-miscellaneous-old records, I found something that made my blood freeze. A folder called Insurance. Inside were hundreds of audio files, all date stamped, all labeled with initials. BM_anxiety_disclosure, JT_affair_confirmed, PS_IVF_failure_depression. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely click the mouse. I opened a spreadsheet titled Leverage Matrix. Every single employee at the firm was listed with color-coded weaknesses. Green for mild leverage, yellow for moderate leverage, red for career-ending leverage. I found my own name. Yellow. LSAT retake, partnership ambitions beyond paralegal role, significant debt, father's gambling problem. I'd never told anyone about my dad's gambling. Not even my roommate. Only Margaret, over cookies, when she'd asked why I seemed worried about money. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again, the violation of it, the calculated cruelty. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. At this hour, I should have been completely alone. Thursday morning, 7:42 a.m. I barely slept, kept dreaming about cookies and color-coded spreadsheets. I came in early, paranoid about what I'd discovered but trying to act normal. Margaret was already at her desk, watering that massive Boston fern she kept by her window, another gift to the office that I now realized probably had a camera in it. I watched her differently now, saw how she positioned herself near the senior partners at the coffee machine. These careful drive-by shootings of reputation. Poor Brad, she'd sighed a partner Davidson, stirring her coffee thoughtfully, still struggling with his. And she'd let it trail off, let Davidson's imagination fill in the blanks with whatever darkness he wanted to see. I followed Margaret to her office around 10, pretending to deliver mail that didn't exist. Her door was cracked, and I heard her on a call. "Yes, Richardson, at Cromwell and Associates," she was saying, her voice different businesslike, cold. "The senior associate you're considering, Brad Morrison. I have information about his stability you might find interesting." There was a pause. "My consulting fee remains $30,000. Same Swiss account as always." Who the fuck sells their coworkers' secrets to rival firms? This woman, apparently. I nearly dropped the fake mail. Margaret wasn't just sabotaging careers internally, she was running a goddamn corporate espionage ring, selling intelligence to the highest bidder. Brad was being shopped to competitors, not as a potential hire, but as damaged goods, his weaknesses packaged and sold like insider trading of human misery. That afternoon, while Margaret was at her monthly library board meeting, which I now suspected was probably more secret selling, I created a backup of everything on a hidden cloud drive. Used a VPN, fake email, the works I'd learned from Brad's mistakes about leaving digital footprints. I noticed Margaret's computer was always logged in, even when she was away. Her password was probably something stupidly simple, like CookieZone123, but I didn't need it. She never locked her screen. Security through being the sweet old lady no one would suspect. During lunch, when I knew she'd be gone for exactly 45 minutes, she was creepily punctual. I sneaked into her office. The email drafts folder was a goldmine of evil. Dozens of anonymous tips to HR, all from different proxy accounts, all about her cookie kids, Derek's drinking problem, Patricia's emotional instability, Brad's concerning behavior. I was so absorbed in reading that I didn't hear her come back early. "Looking for something, dear?" I spun around. Margaret stood in the doorway, holding a Pret-a-Manger bag, that grandmother smile nowhere to be seen. I froze, my hand still on her mouse, my brain cycling through lies at the speed of panic. "Just leaving the Henderson brief you requested," I managed, gesturing vaguely at her desk where no brief existed. Margaret's smile was sharp as a legal document. "I didn't request any brief, Sophie." The next 3 days were psychological warfare disguised as office life. Margaret watched me constantly, those warm brown eyes now cold as January in Manhattan. She stopped inviting me to cookie breaks, told everyone I seemed stressed and paranoid, that maybe the job was too much pressure for someone so young. I found my access to certain drives mysteriously revoked. My badge stopped working for the 43rd floor. Even the good coffee machine started rejecting my card. She was isolating me, cutting me off from the herd like a lion with a gazelle. Then Monday came, December 9th, 8:30 a.m. I arrived to find my desk being searched by security. 2 beefy guys in ill-fitting suits, going through my drawers like I was hiding state secrets in my tampon box. "We received a tip about missing client funds," the taller one said, not meeting my eyes. Margaret appeared like she'd been summoned, all concern and maternal worry. "Oh, Sophie, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. These things happen. We all make mistakes when we're overwhelmed." They found $20,000 in my desk drawer cash I'd never seen before, wrapped in bands I'd never touched. My computer history showed visits to offshore banking sites I'd never accessed, searches for "how to embezzle from law firm" that I'd never typed. Margaret was framing me, and she'd done it perfectly. Every defense I had would require admitting I'd been snooping through her files. I was fucked either way. "This must be so stressful for you," Margaret cooed, touching my shoulder with those soft, poisonous hands. "Would you like a cookie?" I made snickerdoodles. As security escorted me to HR, my box of personal items clutched in my shaking hands, I passed Margaret in the hallway. She leaned in close, that rose-scented hand cream making me want to vomit, and mouthed 5 words that made my blood boil. "Should have eaten the cookies, dear." The audacity of this woman was absolutely mind-blowing. She'd drugged people for decades, and now she was taunting me about it. In HR, I was fighting for my career while trying not to completely lose my shit. The evidence looked damning: forged emails from my account to clients asking about investment opportunities, security footage showing someone who looked exactly like me entering the office at 3 a.m. last Tuesday. I knew it was doctored, but how do you prove you weren't somewhere when there's video of you being there? The HR director, Patricia Kemp, kept looking at me with this mixture of disappointment and disgust. Sophie, the evidence is overwhelming. $20,000 in cash, these emails, the security footage. It's fake, I said, knowing how desperate I sounded. All of it. Margaret. Miss Brennan has been with this firm for 15 years. Patricia cut me off. She's heartbroken about this situation. She actually asked us to go easy on you, said you might be having personal problems. I wanted to scream. The woman who framed me was playing the merciful grandmother, probably earning more trust points while destroying my life. Then the door opened, and Thomas Park from IT walked in. I'd never really talked to him. He was one of those guys who kept to himself, ate lunch at his desk, definitely didn't do Cookie Mondays. I need to show you something, he said to Patricia, not even looking at me. Thomas opened his laptop and pulled up what looked like server logs. I've been tracking Margaret Brennan for 2 years, he said, his voice flat and professional. Ever since she got me demoted by reporting my drinking problem. He made air quotes, his jaw tight. I'd told her about my father's alcoholism during one of her cookie sessions. A week later, there's an anonymous tip to HR about me showing up drunk. I was breathalyzed 3 times that month. Always blew 0. Looking back, Thomas was the hero. I didn't know I needed this quiet IT guy who'd been plotting revenge through code instead of cookies. He showed them Margaret's digital footprint, the proxy servers she'd used to send the fake emails, the security footage that had been edited using Adobe Premiere on Margaret's workstation at 2:47 a.m. Tuesday morning. She didn't know I put tracking software on her machine after what she did to me, Thomas said. Every keystroke, every file accessed, every edit made, 2 years of evidence. Patricia's face went from skeptical to shocked to absolutely furious in about 30 seconds. She planted the money Sunday night, Thomas continued, pulling up badge reader logs. Here's her entering Sophie's floor at 11:18 p.m. Here's her at Sophie's desk at 11:23. The offshore banking searches were made from her IP address. Then the browser history was copied to Sophie's machine using remote access. The room went dead silent except for the hum of Thomas's laptop fan. Get Margaret in here, Patricia said, her voice like ice. Now, December 9th, 2:15 p.m. Margaret entered HR like she was arriving for tea, all composed elegance and grandmother sweetness. She'd even brought a plate of cookies, chocolate chip, fresh from the break room oven. What's this about? She asked, setting the cookies on the table like a peace offering. Is Sophie all right? I've been so worried. Patricia didn't touch the cookies. Neither did anyone else. We all knew now. When presented with Thomas's evidence, Margaret's face didn't change. This is obviously fabricated, she said calmly. Thomas has had a vendetta against me since his disciplinary issues. Alcoholism can make people paranoid, you know. Who doubles down when caught red-handed? This woman, apparently. But I remembered something, a detail from my late-night snooping that suddenly felt important. Check her cookie recipe blog, I said. Margaret's composure cracked, just for a second, but we all saw it. What blog? Patricia asked. Margaret's Motivational Mondays, I said, pulling it up on Patricia's computer. She posts cookie recipes and inspirational quotes, but there's a hidden back end. Thomas was already typing. Within minutes, he'd founded a password-protected section of the blog that was basically Margaret's blackmail database. Detailed notes about every employee, their secrets tagged and categorized like some twisted library system. Brad Morrison - anxiety medication - partnership liability. Patricia Summers - IVF debt - emotionally unstable. So, more damning were the payment records. Recipe consultations from rival firms totaling over $400,000 in the past 3 years. $30,000 from Cromwell for Brad's information. $50,000 from Richardson Partners for details about our merger strategy, gathered from associates who discussed it over cookies. The IT audit went deeper. Margaret had installed keyloggers on computers she'd helped fix, had cameras hidden in the decorative plants she'd gifted to offices. That Boston fern in her office, it had a webcam that streamed directly to her personal server. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again, the scope of it, the violation of everyone who'd ever trusted her. Margaret's mask finally slipped completely. You ungrateful brats, she snapped, her grandmother voice gone, replaced by something sharp and vicious. I held this place together. I knew everything about everyone, kept the peace, prevented disasters. Davidson knew exactly what I was doing and approved it. She was confessing, actually confessing. and Patricia was recording every word on her phone. You think I'm the only one? Margaret continued, laughing now, this bitter sound that made my skin crawl. We're in every office, every firm. The helpers, the mothers, the ones you trust. We know everything because you tell us everything, and information is worth more than any salary they'd ever pay us. The room was silent. Then Patricia said quietly, Margaret, you're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and the FBI will be very interested in your recipe consultations. December 10th, 9 a.m. The firm launched a full investigation that made Watergate look like a parking violation. They brought in external auditors, cybersecurity experts, even a criminal psychologist to understand how Margaret had operated for so long without detection. The discoveries were staggering. Margaret's 30-year history showed the same pattern at 3 previous firms. Lawyers who should have made partner but didn't. Careers mysteriously derailed after cookie confessions. Competing firms always one step ahead in negotiations. Total damage. 47 careers destroyed or significantly impacted. $12 million in stolen information and insider trading. And this is the part that still haunts me, 3 suicides among former associates that we couldn't help but wonder about now. I still can't believe she had the nerve to do this for 30 years straight. The authorities got involved fast. Recording without consent in New York is a Class E felony, and she'd done it hundreds of times. Wire fraud, corporate espionage, extortion, the charges kept piling up like discovery documents in a class action lawsuit. Margaret was arrested at her home in Westchester, this perfect suburban house with a white picket fence and garden gnomes. The FBI found recording equipment worth over $100,000, servers full of stolen data, and a safety deposit box with $900,000 in cash. I got an Instagram DM from someone named Amy Brennan. The message was simple. You don't understand. She was doing it for me. Amy was Margaret's daughter. She sent me photos her 7-year-old son Lucas in a wheelchair, hooked up to machines I couldn't even identify. Lucas had a rare genetic disorder called Sanfilippo syndrome. The experimental treatment keeping him alive cost $200,000 a year. Insurance covered nothing. The last photo Amy sent was from the previous week. Lucas, finally walking after his latest treatment, holding Margaret's hand in what must have been one of their last visits before the arrest. Every cookie she baked, Amy wrote, every secret she sold, it all went to keeping my son alive. She chose between your careers and his life. What would you have done? I stared at that photo for an hour, trying to reconcile the grandmother helping her grandson walk with the woman who destroyed Brad Morrison's life for $30,000. The truth was messier than I'd wanted it to be. December 20th, 4:30 p.m. My last day at Whitman, Sterling, and Associates. I was leaving, not fired, but I couldn't stay in a place where everyone knew me as the girl who almost got framed for embezzlement. The partners had offered me a substantial settlement, $150,000 to sign an NDA and disappear quietly. I took it. My student loans weren't going to pay themselves, and frankly, I wanted to forget this place existed. Margaret pled guilty to 14 counts of wiretapping, 3 counts of extortion, and 1 count of corporate espionage. 3 years in prison with possibility of parole in 18 months. Her lawyer played the dying grandson card hard. The judge was sympathetic, but said, Miss Brennan, you chose to fund medical treatment through destroying careers. There were other options. But were there? $200,000 a year for experimental treatment insurance wouldn't cover? I kept thinking about that photo of Lucas walking. I visited Margaret once at Rikers Island. She looked smaller and orange, older, like someone had deflated her. The warm grandmother persona was gone, replaced by something harder but somehow more honest. I won't apologize for saving my grandson, she said, her hands folded on the metal table between us. But I am sorry about you. You reminded me of myself at your age, ambitious, smart, trying to make it in a man's world where they promote mediocre men over brilliant women. She leaned forward then, and even through the plexiglass, I could smell that faint rose scent that still made my stomach turn. Davidson knew, she said quietly. The senior partner. He knew everything. I was his intelligence network, keeping the firm competitive. He protected me in exchange for information about rival firms. You think I lasted 15 years here by baking cookies? I wanted to record this, to expose Davidson too, but of course, no phones allowed in Rikers. No proof, just the word of a convicted felon against a senior partner at a white shoe law firm. 6 months later, I'm at a new firm, smaller, less prestigious, but cleaner somehow. They have an office manager here too. Another sweet maternal woman named Carol who brings in brownies every Friday and remembers everyone's birthday. When she offered me a brownie my first week, I politely declined. I'm trying to cut back on sugar, I said. She looked hurt but smiled. More for everyone else then. I bring my own coffee now, in a thermos I fill at home. I eat lunch alone, usually at my desk or in the park when it's nice. I keep my personal life completely separate from work. My colleagues don't even know I have a roommate, let alone my family situation or career ambitions. The other day, Carol cornered me in the break room. "Sophie, dear, you seem so isolated. Is everything okay? You can talk to me about anything." I looked at her, really looked at her. The warm eyes, the concerned expression, the way her phone was positioned just right on the counter. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe Carol was exactly what she seemed, but maybe she wasn't. "I'm fine," I said, and walked away. I made partner track last month. My supervisor said it was because of my excellent work and professional boundaries. "You're not like other millennials," he said. "You don't overshare, you just deliver." If only he knew why. The fact that Margaret had a color-coded leverage matrix with every employee's weakness cataloged like some twisted library system is insane. But what really gets me is Davidson, the senior partner, knew everything. Margaret wasn't some rogue office manager, she was corporate-sanctioned espionage, the firm's intelligence network. They protected her for 15 years while she sold secrets to competitors. Sophie's paranoia at her new job, bringing her own coffee, eating alone, that's what Margaret really stole. The ability to trust workplace kindness. Every office has a Margaret, and you'll never know until it's too late. But speaking of betrayal between people who called each other family, let me tell you about two best friends who built a gaming empire from their dorm room. Forbes 30 under 30 to FBI fraud investigation in one live stream, that's my business partner's speedrun. He gambled away $300,000 in pre-orders on Monkey Knife Fight NFTs, then told 80,000 viewers I was the thief. Yeah, welcome to my nightmare. I'm Ryan Torres, and this is the most expensive screen share mistake in streaming history. Tuesday evening, 11:43 p.m., in our converted garage in Austin, Texas. The kind of November night where it's still 70 degrees and the air conditioner's fighting a losing battle against the heat from 12 PCs running stress tests. I was hunched over my workbench, trying to get the tactile feedback on our latest gaming mouse prototype, the Nexus Pro, to feel just right. Not too clicky, not too mushy, that perfect sweet spot that makes gamers' fingers happy. Purple LED strips cast these long shadows across scattered circuit boards and about 6 half-empty cans of Monster Energy Ultra. The place smelled like solder flux and broken dreams, mostly mine, from the 17 iterations of this damn mouse that weren't quite right. The garage door burst open, and Kyle Morrison, my business partner, best friend since freshman year at UT Austin, and professional hype man, already had his phone out, streaming. "Yo, chat's gonna love this," Kyle shouted at his screen, swinging the camera toward me. "This man doesn't sleep. 11:43 at night and he's still grinding. This is why Parallax Gaming makes the best peripherals in the game." I forced a tired smile and waved at the 40,000 Twitch followers watching Kyle's impromptu behind-the-scenes stream. 6 years ago, we were eating ramen in our dorm, talking about changing the gaming world. Last year, we hit 2 million in revenue. Forbes 30 under 30 featured us with the headline, "The Garage Gamers Going Global. The American Dream, powered by RGB lighting and enough caffeine to kill a horse." "Say hi to chat, Ryan." Kyle pushed the camera closer to my face. "Hey chat," I mumbled, trying to hide how exhausted I was. "Just making sure your next mouse click feels like butter." Kyle ended the stream after a few more minutes of showing off our setup, but something was off. His eyes were bloodshot, not the normal streaming, until 4 a.m. bloodshot, but something else. Jittery, unfocused. "Hey, I need next month's inventory budget early," he said, too casual, shoving his phone in his pocket. "Big opportunity at PAX East. Gotta lock it down." I should have asked more questions, but I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? We'd built this thing together. "Yeah, sure," I said, already turning back to my prototype. "I'll transfer it tomorrow." His phone buzzed constantly as he left these rapid-fire notifications I didn't recognize. Looking back, those were cryptocurrency price alerts. But I was too focused on perfecting the mouse click resistance to notice my best friend was already planning our destruction. 1 week later, Wednesday afternoon, 3:27 p.m. I was in our actual office, a step up from the garage, a small space we rented in East Austin, reviewing our quarterly finances on my second monitor while debugging code on the first. Multitasking was my superpower, or at least, that's what Kyle always told our investors. The numbers weren't adding up. We should have had 400,000 in operating capital, but our business account was showing 180,000. That's a pretty fucking significant difference when you're trying to order inventory from Shenzhen, Kyle was in his streaming room, basically a converted closet with acoustic foam and ring lights, doing a sponsored segment for G Fuel. I could hear him through the thin walls. Use code PARALLAX for 30% off your first order. This stuff literally fuels our innovation. I waited until he was done, then knocked on his door. He opened it, still wearing his streaming smile, that practiced enthusiasm that could sell ice to Eskimos. Yo, what's up? Great stream today. Chat was going crazy about the new colorways. Where's the rest of our operating capital? I asked, showing him my laptop screen. Kyle didn't even blink, just pulled out his phone and showed me what looked like a Coinbase business dashboard. Oh, that's in our high-yield crypto account, he explained, scrolling through numbers that seemed to match. Bitcoin's about to moon, bro. We'll double it by Christmas, maybe triple. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag. Kyle's hand was shaking slightly as he held the phone, and he immediately changed the subject to our upcoming product launch. Trust me, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I've been studying this stuff. It's basically free money. Plus, keeping everything in checking is boomer mentality. I trusted him. We'd been brothers since that first all-nighter freshman year, coding our website while sharing a 2-liter of Mountain Dew Code Red. Kyle handled the business side, I handled the engineering. That was our deal. Just be careful, I said. We need that money for the Nexus Pro production run. Always am, Kyle grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. I went back to my desk, but something kept nagging at me. Kyle's personal streaming setup had gotten incredibly elaborate lately, a $10,000 camera that definitely wasn't in our equipment budget, professional lighting that looked like a Hollywood set, a new custom PC with specs that made my engineering rig look like a potato. Hey, I called out. That new camera setup, was that a business expense? Investment in our brand, baby, Kyle called back, already back to streaming. Content is king. But content wasn't paying our manufacturers. 2 weeks pass. Friday morning, 9:15 a.m. I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. Not the good kind, angry emails from 3 influencers saying their sponsored Nexus Pro review units never arrived. These were big names. Shrouded Gaming with 2 million subscribers, Techbeard with his massive review channel, and XXS Sniper Queen XX, who could make or break a product launch with a single tweet. I checked our FedEx shipping records. Kyle had marked them as sent 2 weeks ago, but FedEx had no record of any packages. The tracking numbers he'd entered were completely fake, just random strings of numbers. I drove to the office in a rage, ready to confront Kyle about the shipping disaster, but found him passed out at his desk. His monitor was still on, multiple browser tabs open like a confession spread across dual screens. Stake.com, Roulette, America's Card Room, online poker, online blackjack, online everything. The browser history was worse than damning, it was devastating. Timestamps showed he'd been gambling during client calls, during team meetings, during his own fucking streams sometimes. Kyle woke up when I slammed my laptop on the desk, immediately scrambling to close everything. Research for a sponsorship deal, he mumbled, not even trying to make it convincing. These gambling sites pay huge for promotion. But I'd seen the account balance on screen for a split second, negative $8,000 on something called Platinum VIP Blackjack. Who the fuck goes $8,000 in the hole on a blackjack table? Kyle, what the fuck is this? I grabbed his monitor before he could turn it off. He broke down, actually started crying, which I'd only seen once before when his dog died sophomore year. The pressure of being the face, man, you don't get it. Every stream, every TikTok, every convention I'm on, I'm always fucking on. You get to hide in your cave making mice. I'm out here tap dancing for teenagers who'll cancel us over using the wrong emoji. I wanted to be angry, but he looked so broken. This was my brother, my best friend, the guy who believed in my engineering when nobody else would. It's under control, he promised, wiping his eyes. Just stress relief. I'll stop. He deleted the apps in front of me, one by one. Stake, gone. Roulette, gone. All of it, supposedly deleted. We're gonna make it, Kyle said, pulling me into a hug. The Nexus Pro launch is gonna change everything. Trust me, brother. We hugged it out, brothers again. The launch was in 3 weeks. We could weather this storm. What I didn't see was Kyle immediately reinstalling everything on his phone the moment I left the room, using different email addresses, different usernames, deeper into the hole than I could have imagined. December 1st, 7:42 p.m. The Nexus Pro launch stream was in 1 hour, and I was in our warehouse, really just a storage unit we'd upgraded with shelving, doing final inventory counts. My stomach dropped through the concrete floor. We were supposed to have 5,000 units ready to ship. Boxes and boxes of our revolutionary gaming mouse, each one carefully tested, packaged with our signature purple cable and thank you card. Instead, I was staring at 500 units. 500. That's it. My phone rang. Kyle on FaceTime from the streaming studio, already in full makeup and his Parallax gaming jersey. Small hiccup, he said, that fake streaming smile plastered on his face. Tell them we're doing a limited first drop. Exclusivity, you know? Supreme does it all the time. Kyle, we took pre-orders for 3,000 units at $99 each. That's $300,000 of customer money. Where are the rest of the mice? I could see him sweating through the makeup. The ring light was catching every bead of perspiration on his forehead. Where's the pre-order money, Kyle? My voice was shaking now. Long pause. I could hear donation alerts already going off in the background, our loyal viewers getting hyped for the launch they'd been waiting months for. Tied up in inventory shipping, he finally said. It'll clear Monday. The manufacturer needed a deposit for the next run. He was lying. After 6 years of friendship, I knew his tells, the way his left eye twitched slightly, how he'd look up and to the right like he was accessing some creative part of his brain. Kyle was lying to my face about $300,000. Looking back, I should have shut down the stream right then, should have walked into that studio and told 50,000 viewers the truth. But I was an idiot who still believed in brotherhood. Kyle. Stream's starting, gotta go, trust me, brother. He hung up. I stood there in the warehouse, surrounded by empty shelves where our future should have been, and watched the stream on my phone. Kyle was magic on camera, he always had been. Charming, funny, making the limited drop seem intentional, exclusive, special. Chat was eating it up. Super chats flowing like water. First 500 are basically collector's items. Someone typed with $100 donation. Then Kyle started promising features we'd never discussed. Wireless charging that we hadn't developed. Haptic feedback that existed only in my prototype notes. Shipping dates that were physically impossible even if we had the inventory. Every Nexus Pro comes with our revolutionary auto-calibration software, he was saying. We didn't have auto-calibration software. We didn't even have a software team. The chat was going insane. Orders flooding in. The 500 units sold out in 3 minutes. But Kyle kept the order page open. Due to overwhelming demand, we're opening more slots. Who the fuck sells products that don't exist to people who trust you? December 5th, 2:13 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Hadn't slept properly since the launch stream. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those empty warehouse shelves and heard the donation alerts from viewers who thought they were supporting their favorite gaming company. I drove to the office in my beat-up 2006 Honda Civic, the same car I'd had since college, because every penny went back into the company. Used my override code to get into Kyle's office. If he wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. His computer was password protected, but Kyle was an idiot about security. The password was still TwitchMoney23, the same one he'd used for everything since we started. What I found destroyed me. Absolutely fucking destroyed me. Kyle had been running 2 sets of books for 8 months. 8 months of lying to my face every single day. The real books showed we were $700,000 in debt. The crypto investment account had never existed. He'd lost it all on something called Monkey Knife Fight NFTs that looked like drunk toddlers had drawn them, and leveraged Dogecoin trades that went exactly as well as you'd expect. The pre-order money? Gone. Lost on a guaranteed crypto pump and dump scheme Kyle found on a Discord server called Diamond Hands Guaranteed. The group had disappeared the day after he sent them $200,000. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again, the betrayal of it, the stupidity of it all. But it got worse. So much worse. Kyle had been taking personal loans from the business. $60,000 for a Rolex Submariner, listed as brand building. $20,000 for first-class flights to conventions where, according to his Instagram, he'd spent the entire time partying instead of meeting with retailers like he'd told me. Then I found his Discord DMs. Kyle was actively setting up a competing company, KM Gaming. He'd been messaging our manufacturers directly, promising them faster payment terms, using Parallax's reputation as collateral. My partner doesn't understand the business side, one message read. When I go solo, you'll see what real success looks like. The last message was from yesterday. Parallax is done. I'll announce it tomorrow. Get ready to pivot all production to KM Gaming. I sat there in his stupid streaming chair, surrounded by his wall of fake positivity, framed tweets from fans, photos from conventions, that Forbes 30 Under 30 article where he'd called me the genius behind the magic. Then I saw his streaming schedule on his second monitor. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., big announcement, the future of Parallax Gaming. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely take photos of everything, but I documented it all. Every receipt, every Discord message, every falsified document. He was planning to bury us live on stream, and I had less than 18 hours to figure out how to stop him. December 6th, 4 p.m. I confronted Kyle in person, arriving at the office with a stack of printouts thick enough to beat someone with. Everything spread across his streaming desk, the fake books, the Rolex receipt, the KM Gaming Incorporation documents with his signature dated 2 months ago. Kyle didn't even try to deny it, just sat there in his gaming chair, spinning slowly back and forth like a villain in a Bond movie who'd given up on the whole evil genius thing. "You don't understand the pressure," he said. His eyes were manic, pupils dilated, clearly hadn't slept in days. There were 3 empty cans of Red Bull on his desk and a flask of something that definitely wasn't more Red Bull. Every stream, they expect more. Bigger giveaways, better content, more hype. You just sit in your cave making mice. I'm out here being the brand. I am Parallax Gaming. The audacity of this man was absolutely mind-blowing. He'd stolen everything and was playing the victim. "Kyle, we can fix this." I tried, even though I knew we couldn't. File bankruptcy, restructure, start over. We've built an audience. We can rebuild. But Kyle was beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond anything resembling sanity. He pulled out his phone, showing me some sketchy crypto trading app. "I've got it figured out," he insisted, his hands shaking as he typed. "This crypto play tonight, Solana's about to explode. I put our last 100,000 on it. We'll be millionaires by morning. By the way, if you're anxious about where this train wreck is heading, subscribe now because what happens next is worse than you're imagining. You put our last 100,000, the money for rent, for Juan and Ashley's paychecks on fucking Solana? It's going to 20x minimum. This guy on Discord, he's never wrong. He called the last 3 pumps perfectly. I wanted to grab him, shake him, make him understand that Discord crypto bros weren't financial advisors. But the stream started in 2 hours, and Kyle was already past saving. "Please," I begged, actually begged my best friend. "Cancel the stream. We'll figure this out privately." Kyle laughed this hollow sound that I'll never forget, and tell 50,000 people what? That their favorite gaming company is broke, that their pre-orders are gone, that they trusted the wrong people. He took another swig from his flask. My career would be over. I'd be the laughingstock of Twitch. LSF would eat me alive. He stood up, stumbling slightly, heading toward the streaming room. "Trust me, brother," he said, not looking back. "I've got this. One last show. One last bet. We're gonna be legends." I knew then that Kyle wasn't planning to save Parallax Gaming. He was planning to burn it down and somehow walk away from the ashes like a phoenix. Or at least that's what he thought he was doing. What he actually did was so much worse. December 6th, 6:58 p.m. I was watching from my apartment, laptop open to Kyle's stream, knowing I couldn't stop this train wreck but unable to look away. Like watching a car accident in slow motion, except the car was our company and Kyle was driving it straight off a cliff while live streaming the whole thing. The stream started normal. Kyle had sobered up just enough to seem coherent, reviewing our year, thanking supporters. Chat was hyped, 50,000 viewers and climbing. Donation alerts going off every few seconds. People loved Kyle. They trusted him. They had no idea what was coming. "Before we get to the big announcement," Kyle said, that streaming smile painted on his face, "let me check something real quick." Then his phone buzzed. The Solana trade. Kyle's face lit up for a split second, that hopeful expression I'd seen 1,000 times when he checked crypto prices. Then it drained completely. All the color, all the life, just gone. He'd forgotten to turn off screen share. Everyone saw it. 50,000 people watched the Binance app show. Position liquidated. Negative $99,947. Total loss. Chat exploded instantly. Is that real? Did he just lose 100K? Oh, Megalul, rip Parallax, scammed. I still can't believe he forgot about screen share, the most basic streaming mistake, and it exposed everything. Kyle started laughing. Not happy laughter, not even nervous laughter, but something unhinged, broken, terrifying. The kind of laugh that makes you want to call someone for help. "You want to know something, chat?" he said, taking another drink from his flask, not even trying to hide it anymore. "It's all gone, everything. Your pre-orders, the company, my best friend's dreams, all of it, gone." The view count was climbing 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. Drama brings viewers like blood brings sharks, and this was a feeding frenzy. Clips were already being posted to LSF. Twitter was exploding. Our company Discord was in complete meltdown. Kyle was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face, makeup running, but he kept streaming, kept talking, kept destroying everything. But you know whose fault it is? Kyle continued, and my blood turned to ice water. My partner, Ryan Torres, that fucking snake, has been embezzling since day one. I literally stood up and screamed at my laptop. What the fuck are you doing? But Kyle was already pulling up screenshots, fabricated Discord conversations he'd apparently been preparing for weeks. Photoshopped bank statements showing transfers to accounts with my name. Fake emails where I discussed stealing money. I trusted him with the finances while I built our brand. Kyle lied, tears still streaming, playing the victim perfectly. He was supposed to be my brother. We started this in our dorm room, and he stole everything. The chat believed him instantly. Why wouldn't they? Kyle was crying on stream, showing evidence, being vulnerable with his community. I was just a name, a face they barely knew, the quiet engineer who sometimes waved at the camera. My phone started buzzing immediately. Twitter notifications, Discord DMs, even LinkedIn messages, death threats, hundreds of them. The stream continued for 3 more hours. 3 fucking hours of Kyle systematically destroying my life while drunk and crying on camera. He painted me as this mastermind villain who'd been planning this from the start. According to Kyle's version, I'd manipulated him, used his trust, sabotaged the company while pretending to be the innocent engineer, working late nights. Ryan always resented that I was the face, Kyle said, wiping his eyes dramatically. He thought he deserved more credit, so he decided to take what he thought was his. Who does this to someone they called brother 5 hours ago? Seriously, who? The fabricated evidence kept coming. Kyle had screenshots of a crypto wallet labeled Ryan's theft account with all our missing funds. Security footage from our office that he'd edited to make it look like I was there at suspicious times. Even a fake confession email where I admitted to everything and taunted him. I just got this an hour ago, Kyle said, pulling up the email dated from that afternoon. He knew I was streaming tonight. He wanted to rub it in my face. Chat was out for blood. My personal information started appearing in the stream. Someone found my address from an old Amazon wishlist. Someone else posted my parents' Facebook profiles, their phone numbers, my sister's Instagram. Guys, please don't harass him, Kyle said, but his tone was all wrong, like he was reading a legal disclaimer, not actually asking them to stop. I just want justice through proper channels. Then he posted his personal PayPal for those who want to help me rebuild after Ryan destroyed everything. $20,000 in the first hour, $30,000 by hour 2. People were literally paying Kyle for destroying my life on stream. The gaming subreddits exploded. Parallax Gaming exposed. Founder admits partner stole everything. Hit the front page of r/gaming within minutes. Every gaming news site picked it up. Kotaku, IGN, even fucking Forbes updated their 30 under 30 article to mention the alleged embezzlement. I tried calling Kyle. Blocked. Texting. Blocked. Email. Blocked. Discord. Blocked everywhere. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again at the calculated cruelty of it all. I was watching my phone flood with death threats, refresh Twitter to see my name trending with scammer and thief, and realize something that made me want to throw up. Kyle had planned this. Every single moment. The fabricated evidence, the crying performance, the victim narrative. He'd prepared an exit scam that used our audience as weapons. He was walking away, looking like the hero, the victim, the brave founder who'd lost everything to his evil partner's betrayal. And there was nothing I could do about it. Who'd believe the quiet engineer over the charismatic streamer crying live to 80,000 viewers? December 7th through 10th. 4 days of hell that felt like 4 years. I went into full investigation mode, running on Rage and Red Bull, documenting everything with the obsessive focus I usually reserved for debugging code. If Kyle wanted to play the evidence game, I'd bury him in actual proof. First, I found Kyle's deleted Twitch VODs. The idiot had forgotten that Twitch doesn't immediately purge deleted content. It sits in their servers for 30 days. I used a crawler script to pull everything. Found streams from 2 months ago where Kyle, drunk at 3 a.m., admitted to losing $40,000 on NBA bets. Another where he bragged about finding a sick crypto opportunity that Ryan doesn't need to know about. Then I found his Instagram stories. Kyle had been posting from Vegas 2 weeks ago when he'd told me he was meeting manufacturers in Shenzhen. Pictures of him at the Bellagio, playing high-stakes poker, champagne and escorts in the VIP section. The metadata showed he'd lost $80,000 that weekend. The smoking gun came from the Nevada Gaming Commission website. Kyle had self-excluded from all Vegas casinos in 2021 after losing his entire student loan in one night, then mysteriously got himself removed from the list this year. But the real devastation was in the corporate records. Kyle's KM Gaming LLC had been filed 2 months ago, using our exact business model, our manufacturer contacts, even patent applications for designs I'd created. He'd been planning to destroy Parallax and immediately launch his replacement, taking our audience with him. I compiled everything into a massive Reddit post, 15,000 words, 300 screenshots, bank records with transaction IDs, the real books versus Kyle's fake ones, security footage showing Kyle taking equipment from our office to sell on eBay. I even found the Discord server where Kyle had bought the fake Solana tip. The seller, Crypto Kingpin 69, had posted about scamming some streaming idiot out of 5,000 for fake insider information. Posted it all to r/livestreamfail at midnight on December 10th. Title: The Truth About Parallax Gaming with Receipts. Within an hour, it hit the front page. The internet did what it does best, investigated everything with the fury of 10,000 unemployed detectives. They found Kyle's old Twitch account from college where he'd been banned for viewbotting. They discovered he'd done this before a smaller company called Vector Peripherals that mysteriously went under after Kyle left to pursue other opportunities. They found his gambling profiles, total losses, $1.2 million over 3 years. They found casino security footage someone leaked of Kyle crying at a blackjack table, begging the pit boss for credit. The narrative flipped completely in 12 hours. Streamers who donated to Kyle's recovery fund were demanding refunds. Major gaming YouTubers were breaking down the evidence frame by frame. The clip of Kyle accidentally showing his liquidated position became a meme template overnight. Kyle tried to stream a response, but his chat was nothing but scammer and L+ radio spam. He lasted 5 minutes before rage quitting. Within 48 hours, Twitch banned him for fraud. PayPal froze his recovery fund pending investigation. The FBI's cybercrime division opened a case for wire fraud. Kyle Morrison, the face of Parallax Gaming, was completely destroyed. And he'd done it to himself, live on stream, in front of everyone. December 20th, 10:30 a.m. I was sitting in a bankruptcy lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams, trying to figure out if there was anything left to salvage from the wreckage Kyle had created. My phone buzzed, unknown international number. Ryan Torres? The accent was unmistakably Shenzhen. This is James Liu from Liu Manufacturing. We saw everything on Reddit. My stomach clenched. Our manufacturer calling to demand payment we didn't have. Kyle tried to screw us too, James continued, and I sat up straighter. He promised us exclusive contract for his new company if we cut you out. We don't work with liars. We want to help you rebuild. The offer was better than I could have hoped for. Manufacturing at cost, payment delayed 6 months if I could deliver a new design. They'd even eat the loss on the unfulfilled Nexus Pro orders. Why? I asked, still not believing it. Because we've worked with you for 3 years. You always delivered. Kyle just talked. Business is about trust, and you earned ours. I started over right there in that lawyer's office, sketching designs on the back of bankruptcy paperwork. Called the new company Phoenix Peripherals with the tagline built on trust. Not subtle, but I was done with subtle. The gaming community rallied behind me in ways I never expected. When I posted a YouTube video explaining my plans to rebuild, it got 2 million views in 48 hours. Comments flooded in from customers who'd been scammed, offering to wait for their products or convert their refunds to investments in the new company. My first product, the Redemption Mouse, I went full melodrama with the naming funded 800% on Kickstarter in 48 hours. $3.2 million from 40,000 backers who explicitly wrote things like "fuck Kyle" in their backer comments. Meanwhile, Kyle's KM Gaming failed spectacularly. No manufacturer would work with him. James Liu had spread the word through the entire Shenzhen network. His streaming career was dead. Anytime he appeared in any chat, it was just walls of scammer and L+ ratio. He tried YouTube, TikTok, even fucking Clubhouse, but the internet never forgets. The FBI fraud investigation resulted in 18 months probation and $50,000 in restitution he'll be paying off for the next decade. His parents had to sell their house to cover his legal fees. 6 months later, I was at an auction for Parallax Gaming's remaining assets. Everything had to go. The office furniture, the inventory, even the streaming equipment. I bought it all for $11,000, pennies on the dollar, including, ironically, Kyle's entire streaming setup and the Twitch channel where he'd destroyed everything. I streamed from it exactly once, sat in Kyle's old chair, looked directly at the camera, and said, "Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. Protect yours." Then I deleted the channel forever. Some chapters need to close completely. The worst part about Kyle's betrayal isn't the stolen money or the fake Solana trade, it's that he forgot to turn off screen share. 6 years of friendship destroyed because he couldn't remember the most basic streaming rule. 50,000 people watched him lose everything in real time, then watched him blame Ryan for it. The fabricated evidence, the crying performance, the Ryan's theft account folder, all while drunk and spiraling. But karma's beautiful sometimes. Ryan rebuilt as Phoenix Peripherals while Kyle's paying restitution for the next decade. His parents sold their house for his legal fees. The internet never forgets, and Kyle's name is forever tied to position liquidated. Speaking of people who destroy others for personal gain, wait until you hear about Sarah, who turned her best friend's wedding into a weapon. What if your maid of honor spent your entire wedding planning documenting your stress to steal your promotion, then used your wedding speech to destroy your career? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. I'm Jessica Chen, 31, investment banker in Manhattan, and this is my story. Thursday evening, 9:47 p.m. on the 38th floor of a Manhattan investment bank, the kind of night where the city lights blur together because you've been staring at Excel for 14 hours straight. Sarah Winters and I were slumped over our desks like casualties of capitalism, surrounded by the debris of our dinner, empty Sweetgreen containers, and about 6 dead Red Bull cans that we'd been nursing since lunch. We were finishing a pitch deck for a $300 million acquisition that was due at 7 a.m., the kind of deal that makes or breaks careers, especially when you're 31 and desperately trying to claw your way up from associate to senior associate. If we survive this, I'm making you my maid of honor, I said, not looking up from my Excel model where I was trying to make the numbers tell the story our MD wanted them to tell. Sarah laughed, this exhausted sound that I'd heard 100 times during our 4 years of working together. Only if you promise your wedding won't be as brutal as this deal. We'd been through hell together 100-hour weeks as analysts, accidentally crying in the same bathroom stall after getting screamed at by the same VP, sharing Adderall during earnings season when sleep became a luxury we couldn't afford. Sarah was the only person who understood why I kept a spare suit in my desk drawer and why my lunch was usually just anxiety medication and spite. 2 a.m. finally came. We submitted the deck, fist bumped with the last of our energy, and started packing up our disaster of a workspace. You know, Jess, Sarah said, something weird in her voice. One of us is going to make senior associate this year. Promise we won't let it change us? Promise, I said, though we both knew that was bullshit. Everything in investment banking changes you. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag, Sarah screenshotting our submission email while I was packing up. For my records, she explained when she saw me looking. So when are you going to marry David anyway? She asked, studying my face with this intensity that felt off for 2 a.m. When I have time to plan a wedding, I laughed. So probably never. But Sarah wasn't laughing. She was watching me like I was a spreadsheet she needed to analyze. 3 months later, February 14th, 7:30 p.m. David had chosen Daniel, this fancy French restaurant on the Upper East Side where they judge you if you don't know which fork to use for the fish course. I was exhausted from another brutal week, but David had insisted, said he'd made the reservation months ago. The proposal happened right as dessert arrived. The waiter brought out this elaborate chocolate souffle, and there it was, a 2.5 carat solitaire nestled in spun sugar. Classic David, thoughtful, but also making sure everyone in the restaurant could see what was happening. Jessica Chen, he said, dropping to one knee while half the restaurant turned to watch. Will you marry me? I said yes, obviously. David was perfect on paper, cybersecurity consultant, 6-figure salary, looked like he stepped out of a Patagonia catalog. After 4 years of dating, it was time. I immediately FaceTimed Sarah from the bathroom because that's what you do when you're 31 and your work friend is basically your only friend. You're my maid of honor, right? I asked before she could even say, congratulations. Sarah squealed, seemed genuinely happy. But then, won't planning affect your performance review? The senior associate decision is in October. Who thinks about performance reviews during an engagement announcement? This woman, apparently. I can handle both, I said, though honestly, I was already stressed thinking about it. Back at work Monday, Sarah had already told everyone. She brought me a stack of wedding magazines, created a shared Pinterest board called Jess's Big Day, and seemed like the perfect supportive friend. During lunch, she pulled out her Moleskine notebook, the one she usually used for meeting notes, and started asking questions. What's your budget? Which venues are you considering? How many guests? Are you thinking October or November? I rattled off answers between bites of my $15 salad, not noticing that she was writing down everything, not just the facts, but my stress levels, my complaints about David's mother, wanting to invite her entire book club, my anxiety about the cost. You should totally document your planning journey, Sarah suggested, her pen still moving. Send me screenshots of everything, vendor emails, contracts, all of it. I'll make you a scrapbook. Looking back, I should have wondered why she needed documentation of my wedding planning, but I was too busy being touched that she cared so much. March 20th, 2:15 p.m. I was in a critical client meeting about a hostile takeover, the kind where you can't even look at your phone without partners giving you death stares. But my phone was exploding in my bag, buzzing so insistently that the client actually asked if someone needed to take an emergency call. I excused myself for a bathroom break and found 17 missed calls from our wedding venue. The place had flooded. A pipe burst in the ceiling, destroyed the main ballroom. They needed an answer about rebooking in the next hour or we'd lose our $40,000 deposit. I was frantically texting from the bathroom stall, trying to coordinate with David, the venue, and our wedding planner when Sarah appeared. She'd noticed me leave the meeting. "Go handle it," she said, checking her phone. "I'll cover for you. Tell them you had a family emergency. That's what maids of honor do." I spent 45 minutes on the phone, sorting out the crisis, moving our date by 3 weeks, dealing with vendor complications. When I returned, the meeting was over. Sarah had filled in perfectly, presenting my part of the analysis without missing a beat. The client loved her preparedness, her attention to detail. That evening, I texted Sarah a complete meltdown. "This is insane. I'm literally going insane. David's mother wants 300 people. 300. I don't even know 300 people. I can't sleep, can't eat, might actually murder someone over centerpiece choices. Why did I say yes to a big wedding? We should have just eloped. I'm going to fail at work, fail at this wedding, fail at everything." Sarah responded with hearts and wine glass emojis. "Let it all out, babe. I'm here for you. You're handling so much pressure. Anyone would be stressed." What I didn't know, Sarah was screenshotting every message, carefully cataloging them in a folder labeled JC Stability Concerns. She was building a case, documenting my breakdown in real time, saving evidence of my inability to handle pressure. The chapter ends with me getting a text I didn't see until later, Sarah texting someone else. Phase 1 documented. She's cracking already. The recipient? Marcus Thompson, our managing director. The same Marcus who would decide who got promoted to senior associate. Sarah wasn't being my friend. She was being a spy, and my wedding was her weapon. April through May became this blur of wedding planning hell, mixed with the usual investment banking torture. The massive merger I was leading, a pharmaceutical company buying its competitor, required 18-hour days. But I also had dress fittings every Tuesday at 5 p.m. sharp, because that was the only time slot the boutique had available. "Go, I'll handle any fires," Sarah always said, waving me off with this supportive smile. "Marcus knows you're getting married. He understands." What I didn't realize was that Sarah was taking video calls from her car during those exact same hours, her laptop propped on her dashboard, making sure Marcus and the other partners saw her as the one who was always available while I was prioritizing personal matters. The bachelorette party in Miami was supposed to be my break from all the stress. May 10th through 12th, a long weekend of beach clubs and overpriced cocktails with my college friends and Sarah. But by 3 a.m. on the second night, I was sobbing on the beach, drunk on tequila and exhaustion. "I don't know if I can do both," I cried into Sarah's shoulder while the waves crashed behind us. "The job, the wedding, everything. I'm failing at all of it. The client acquisition is falling apart. David's stressed about money. His mother added 50 more people to the guest list without asking, and I haven't slept more than 4 hours in weeks." Sarah held me, rubbed my back, made all the right sympathetic noises. "Let it out, babe. You're handling so much. Anyone would crack under this pressure." She also had her phone propped against her beach bag, recording everything for memories. Looking back, who records their friend's mental breakdown at 3 a.m.? Seriously, who does that? Back at work the following week, I noticed Sarah having these little sidebar conversations with Marcus Thompson. Just casual check-ins by the coffee machine, nothing that seemed suspicious at the time. "I'm worried about Jessica," I overheard her saying one morning. "She seems really overwhelmed, maybe taking on too much." Marcus made this concerned face. "Is she handling the client acquisition properly?" "Oh, absolutely," Sarah said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "She's doing her best under the circumstances." The real kicker came at our engagement party in late May. David and I had rented out a rooftop bar in Tribeca, invited all our friends and colleagues. Sarah spent half the night talking to David, and I thought it was sweet, my maid of honor bonding with my future husband. "I need your number," she told him, phone already out. For the surprise bridal shower I'm planning. David gave it to her immediately, charmed by her attention to detail, her concern for making everything perfect for me. June 15th, 6:23 p.m. at the Rainbow Room. My wedding day. 200 guests, a view of the entire Manhattan skyline, and my maid of honor about to give her speech. Sarah looked perfect in her dusty rose bridesmaid dress, holding the microphone with the confidence of someone who'd prepared every word for maximum impact. I've known Jessica for 4 years, she started, smiling at the crowd. I've watched her evolve from this brilliant, driven analyst to, well, someone who called me crying about napkin colors at 2 a.m. last month. The room laughed. I laughed too, though something about it felt off. She went from crushing it in Excel to literally crying over Excel spreadsheets, but for seating charts this time. More laughter. Just last month, she called me completely manic about whether the centerpieces should be 20 inches or 22 inches tall. I thought she was having a breakdown, but no, just wedding planning. Everyone was eating it up, the contrast between competent banker Jessica and crazy bride Jessica. But the way Sarah emphasized certain words, manic, breakdown, crying, made my stomach clench. I still can't believe she had the nerve to use my wedding speech as a performance review assassination. What I didn't notice was Sarah's phone propped against her champagne glass, recording the whole thing, getting everyone's laughter on tape, documenting how the entire room agreed that I'd been unstable lately. During the reception, I saw Sarah deep in conversation with David near the bar. She had her concerned face on the one she used when delivering bad news to clients. Has Jessica seemed distant lately? She was asking. Working late more often. Marcus Thompson, our MD, has been very supportive of her through all this stress. What do you mean? David asked, suddenly alert. Oh, nothing specific? Sarah backtracked, but the seed was planted. I just want to make sure she's okay. You know how demanding Marcus can be. He's been texting her a lot about the Klein deal. The Marcus, who was actually sleeping with Sarah, though nobody said it out loud. The projection was so obvious, it would have been funny if it wasn't my marriage she was trying to sabotage. The evening ended with Sarah catching the bouquet, holding it up triumphantly. Your promotion's next, she shouted at me across the dance floor. The room cheered. Her smile was perfect for the photos, but her eyes were calculating something I wouldn't understand until later. 2 weeks into my Santorini honeymoon, and I'd actually managed to forget about work for entire hours at a time. David and I were at this clifftop restaurant in Oya, watching the sunset paint everything gold and pink, when my phone buzzed. Sarah. Emergency. Klein deal falling apart. Conference call in 20 minutes. Marcus is furious. My stomach dropped. The Klein acquisition was my baby, my ticket to senior associate. If it fell apart while I was on my honeymoon, I have to take this, I told David, already getting up from the table. Are you fucking kidding me? David's face went from relaxed to rage in 2 seconds. We're on our honeymoon. You promised no work. It's an emergency, the Klein deal. There's always an emergency with you lately. I took the call from our hotel bathroom, whispering so David wouldn't hear me through the door. Logged into my laptop, balanced on the marble sink, pulled up the deal documents. 20 minutes of waiting. 30. 45. Finally, Sarah joined the call. Oh my God, Jess, I'm so sorry. False alarm. Marcus sorted it out himself. But he wanted me to note that you were willing to jump on even from vacation. That's dedication. But the damage was done. David was furious. We didn't speak for the rest of dinner. This happened 3 more times during our 7-day honeymoon. Each emergency perfectly timed to cause maximum disruption. David started making snide comments about my priorities, about whether I was married to him or the bank. Meanwhile, Sarah was texting David separately. I only found out later when I saw his phone she'd been messaging him throughout our honeymoon. Is Jessica okay? She seems really scattered lately. I'm worried about her mental state. Has she mentioned feeling overwhelmed? The stress might be getting to her. She sent some concerning emails before your wedding. She was attaching screenshots, my pre-wedding meltdown texts, edited to remove context, making it look like I was having a mental health crisis instead of normal wedding stress. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again. She was trying to destroy my marriage while pretending to save it. When we got back from Santorini, I walked into my office to find Sarah sitting at my desk, using my computer. Just updating the Klein presentation, she chirped. Welcome back. How was the honeymoon? But something was wrong. My desk was too organized. My files had been moved. And Sarah had been assigned as co-lead on 2 of my key accounts. Just covering while you were away, she explained. Marcus thought you might need support transitioning back. Support. Right. The kind of support that stabs you in the back while smiling to your face. July 10th, 11:30 a.m. I'd been back from my honeymoon for 2 weeks, and things were getting progressively weirder. Client meetings I'd scheduled were mysteriously rescheduled. The conference room booking system showed that I'd canceled them, but I definitely hadn't touched Outlook that morning. IT pulled up the logs when I complained. The cancellations came from your laptop at 9:47 a.m., the help desk guy said, looking at his screen. 9:47. I'd been in the bathroom, and Sarah had been borrowing my laptop to print something because her computer was acting up again. The rabbit hole went deeper. I started checking my sent emails, and my blood ran cold. Messages I'd written had been altered before being sent. I'd typed, "I'll review and respond by EOD." The version in my sent folder said, "I'll try to review if I have time." Small changes. But they painted a picture of someone who didn't give a shit about their job. Sarah had also been BCCing herself on my emails. I found this out when a client accidentally replied all to a thread she wasn't supposed to be on. When I confronted the client confused, he forwarded me the original email. Sarah's email address had been added to the BCC field after I'd hit send. Who the fuck hijacks someone's email to make them look incompetent? This woman, apparently. I went through 3 weeks of emails, documenting every alteration. My status reports to Marcus had been edited to make me sound uncertain, uncommitted. "I believe the deal will close" became "I hope the deal might close." "I'm confident in our position" became "I think our position could work." The revelation came when I walked into my office at 2 p.m. and found Sarah at my computer, again. "Just grabbing that model you promised," she said brightly, fingers still on my keyboard. But I could see my screen. She had my email open and was typing a message as me to Marcus. "I'm struggling to balance everything and might need to step back from the client account. What the hell are you doing?" I grabbed the laptop, my hands shaking. Sarah's face was pure innocence. "You said I could send the client update for you, remember? This morning?" "I never said that. I never said anything like that." "Jess, you've been really scattered lately. Are you sure you didn't forget?" Looking back, the gaslighting was so obvious, it's almost embarrassing. I didn't see it sooner. I checked my sent folder. Dozens of emails I didn't write, all making me look like I was falling apart. One to HR asking about stress leave options. Another to Marcus saying I was reconsidering my career trajectory post-wedding. Sarah had been rewriting my professional life, one email at a time. July 20th, 4 p.m. HR called me in for a routine check-in. The head of HR, Patricia, and Marcus Thompson were both there. My stomach dropped before anyone even spoke. "Jessica, we have some concerns about your performance post-wedding." Patricia started, sliding a folder across the table. Inside, printed emails showing missed meetings, delayed responses, concerning messages about your mental state. Then she pulled out an iPad and hit play. It was Sarah's wedding speech, but edited. The jokes about crying and mania were isolated, context removed. The laughter was cut out. It sounded like I was confessing to a mental breakdown in front of 200 witnesses. "Your colleague Sarah brought this to our attention out of concern," Patricia said. "She's worried about you." I still can't believe she recorded my wedding to use against me in a performance review. Then Marcus leaned forward. "Sarah also mentioned you might be having an inappropriate relationship with." "Me?" I actually laughed. Out loud. Couldn't help it. "Sarah's the one sleeping with you, Marcus. Everyone knows it. This is projection." Marcus's face went red, but he pushed forward. "These are serious accusations, Jessica. Your behavioral changes, your emotional instability." "Documented where?" I interrupted. "In edited emails? In a wedding speech taken out of context? In text messages to my friend while planning a 200-person wedding?" Patricia pulled out more papers, screenshots of my text to Sarah about the wedding stress, about feeling overwhelmed, about wanting to murder someone over centerpiece choices. "This demonstrates a pattern of instability," Patricia said. The full scope hit me like a freight train. Sarah had been planning this for months, maybe since the day I got engaged. Every supportive gesture was intelligence gathering. Every offer to help was creating an opportunity to sabotage. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again at the calculated cruelty of it all. "We're putting you on performance review," Patricia concluded, "and we strongly suggest you withdraw from senior associate consideration until things stabilize." Number 5. I walked out of that meeting knowing 2 things. Sarah had orchestrated this perfectly, and I was fucked unless I could prove it. July 21st, 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. David was next to me, snoring softly, but he'd been asking questions all evening. About Marcus, about my mental state, about why Sarah kept texting him, asking if I was okay. "Your best friend is really worried about you," he'd said over dinner. maybe you should talk to someone. My own husband was starting to believe I was losing it. I went to the living room, opened my laptop, and started war planning. If Sarah wanted to play dirty, I'd bury her in dirt. Babe? David appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing? Sarah's been sabotaging me, I said. She's edited my emails, recorded our private conversations. She's trying to steal my promotion. David was fully awake now. That's... Jesus, Jess. That sounds paranoid. I can prove it, I said. I just need to figure out how. That's when David, beautiful, brilliant David, said the magic words. If she's been accessing your computer, there'll be logs. I work in cybersecurity, remember? Let me look. We spent the weekend investigating like a couple of caffeinated detectives. David found everything keylogger software Sarah had installed during a software update she'd insisted on helping me with back in April. Every keystroke I'd made for 3 months was logged, including passwords. The email alterations were all traceable to Sarah's login credentials. She'd been signing into my email from her computer, making changes, then deleting the login notifications. This is illegal, David said, staring at the evidence. Like, criminally illegal. But the real smoking gun came Sunday evening. Sarah was coming over for a strategy dinner to help me fight the performance review. The fox coming to guard the henhouse. While Sarah was in our bathroom, David did something brilliant. She'd connected to our Wi-Fi, which meant she'd agreed to our network terms of service, the ones David had written himself, that included consent to monitoring for security purposes. He legally cloned her hard drive in 12 minutes flat. What we found on it made my blood run cold. Folders labeled with women's names from Sarah's previous firms. Amanda, Goldman Sachs, 2019. Rachel, Deutsche Bank, 2021. Michelle, Credit Suisse, 2022. Same pattern, same tactics, same outcome. Sarah gets promoted, they get destroyed. Then I found it. A Word document titled JC Promotion Strategy, created in February, 2 weeks before David even proposed. It detailed everything getting close to me, becoming maid of honor, documenting my stress, involving my husband, the edited emails, even the wedding speech recording. But the document that made me actually scream was her draft recommendation letter for the senior associate position, written in May, 2 months before the position was officially announced. Before my wedding, before the honeymoon sabotage, before any of it. She'd been picked already. This whole thing, my destruction, was just insurance. July 25th, 9 a.m. The boardroom on the 40th floor, the one they usually reserved for client presentations. I'd called the meeting, demanding Marcus, Patricia from HR, and the managing partners attend. Sarah tried to join, but I'd specifically excluded her from the invite. This better be important, Jessica, Marcus said, already irritated. I connected my laptop to the screen. Sarah Winters has been systematically sabotaging my career for 8 months. The room went silent. Then Marcus laughed. Jessica, these accusations. I clicked to the first slide. The keylogger data, timestamps showing every keystroke captured. The email alterations with her digital fingerprints all over them. The edited wedding speech video side by side with the original. This is illegal, Patricia said, her face going pale. If this is real, it's multiple felonies. Then I showed them Sarah's hard drive contents. The 3 other women from previous firms, Amanda, Rachel, Michelle. I'd contacted all of them. 2 had flown in from other cities and were waiting in the lobby. Should I bring them in? I asked. Marcus's face was draining of color. That's not necessary. Actually, it island. I clicked to the next slide. Sarah's draft recommendation letter for senior associate, dated May 15th. She was pre-selected for the promotion 2 months before the position was announced. This whole thing destroying me was just insurance. But the real bombshell was the audio. David had legally recorded Sarah and Marcus in our apartment discussing their plan. Sarah's voice filled the boardroom. Jessica's so emotional, it's almost too easy. The wedding speech alone will destroy her credibility. Marcus's response. Just make sure she withdraws from consideration. I've already told the partners you're getting it, but we need plausible cover. Then the part that made everyone gasp. After this, we do the same thing at Goldman. My friend there has a position opening up. Same playbook, find the competition, destroy her, you get promoted, we split the signing bonus. The managing partner, William Chen, no relation, stood up slowly. Marcus, Sarah, you're both terminated immediately. Security will escort you out. Sarah tried to threaten lawsuit, but the evidence was overwhelming. Criminal charges were filed. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Marcus got 18 months. Sarah got 2 years, though she only served 14 months. I not only kept my job but was fast-tracked to managing director within a year, youngest female MD in the firm's history. A direct promotion, skipping senior associate entirely. But here's the truth about winning. It doesn't undo the damage. I still can't trust female friends at work. David and I needed 6 months of couples therapy to rebuild after the doubt Sarah planted. I keep my personal life completely separate from work now. No wedding photos on my desk, no personal conversations at happy hours, no vulnerability with colleagues, ever. Sarah LinkedIn stalked me last month from what was obviously a fake profile. Her real one shows a 2-year gap, then a junior position at a small firm in Delaware. The bio mentions nothing about her time at our firm or her achievements. The final scene was our 1-year anniversary dinner. David raised his champagne. To surviving Sarah Winters. To learning that weddings and work don't mix, I replied. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I was desperate. You were always better than me. S. I showed David, then blocked the number. Some apologies come too late, and some bridges are better left burned. Sarah installing a keylogger during a software update in April, then using Jessica's honeymoon to sabotage her marriage while stealing her promotion. That's next-level betrayal. But the detail that haunts me? Sarah was texting Jessica's husband during their Santorini honeymoon, planting seeds of doubt about his new wife's mental state. She literally tried to destroy a marriage 7 days after the wedding. David had to clone Sarah's hard drive to find the truth. The folders labeled Amanda, Goldman Sachs, 2019, and Rachel, Deutsche Bank, 2021, showed this was Sarah's career strategy. Jessica got promoted to MD, but she still can't eat lunch with coworkers. Some victories come with permanent scars. But speaking of workplace predators, let me tell you about Trevor, whose real name wasn't even Trevor. The eager farm boy from Iowa who brought donuts, complete fiction. He was actually executing his father's 15-year revenge plan, and we'd hired him ourselves. Yeah, I gave him all our passwords. I'm Alex, and this is how Trevor Matthews destroyed 7 careers in 3 months. Monday morning, 10:37 a.m. at Velocity Creative, our boutique advertising agency in Chicago's West Loop. I was in my office reviewing portfolios for our summer internship program when Trevor Matthews walked in for his first day. He was early, actually early, not that fake 5 minutes early that most interns do. Wearing this slightly ill-fitting suit that screamed Men's Warehouse off the rack, carrying a white box from Stan's Donuts. I didn't know what everyone liked, so I got 2 of everything, he said. This genuine nervousness in his voice that immediately disarmed me. I hope that's okay. The 7-person core team warmed to him instantly. He was from small-town Iowa, Ottumwa, I think first in his family to graduate college. Talked about his mom working double shifts at the hospital to pay for his education. During introductions, he pulled out an actual physical notebook, the kind with the black and white marbled cover. Is it okay if I take notes? He asked. I just want to learn everything I can from you guys. Rachel, our art director, actually said "aw" out loud, like he was a puppy who'd done a trick. By lunch, Trevor had memorized everyone's coffee orders. By 6 p.m., he was reorganizing the supply closet nobody had asked him to touch. At 9 p.m., he was still there, studying our award-winning campaigns from the past 5 years. Would it be okay if I recorded some of our brainstorm sessions? He asked as I was heading out. Just for my own learning, I want to study how pros think through problems. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag who asks to record creative sessions on their first day, but I was charmed by the enthusiasm. Sure, kid, whatever helps you learn. He smiled this wide Iowa farm boy smile. You won't regret giving me this chance, Alex, I promise. Narrator, I would absolutely regret it. 2 weeks in, Wednesday afternoon, 3:20 p.m. Trevor had become the agency's adopted little brother. He brought Rachel her oat milk latte every morning, without being asked. Helped James, the copywriter, design a logo for his daughter's school project. Even fixed the temperamental printer that had been jamming for 6 months. Turned out it just needed some specific roller cleaned. During a brainstorm for our brewery client, Trevor asked these innocent questions that seemed designed to make us feel smart. How do you guys come up with such authentic ideas? He asked, pencil poised over his notebook. Everyone was eager to share their process. It felt good, having someone look at us like we were geniuses instead of burned-out creatives pushing 40. My ADHD actually helps with creative connections, I explained, not even thinking about why I was oversharing. The Adderall keeps me focused, but that scattered thinking before the meds kick in, that's where the magic happens. Rachel laughed. That's why I'm so good at beer campaigns, lots of field research before I got sober 3 years ago. James mentioned his expensive divorce limiting his ability to take risks. Can't afford to lose this job, so I play it safer than I used to. We were sharing because Trevor seemed so safe, so eager, writing everything in his notebook with a pencil that constantly needed sharpening. He'd stop mid-sentence to sharpen it, like some kind of anxious tic. Who takes that many notes about people's personal problems during a creative brief? This guy, apparently. What I didn't notice was his phone propped against his notebook at just the right angle, the little red recording light hidden by his coffee cup, or the way he'd casually follow up on the personal stuff. "Can you show me how you organize client files?" he asked that evening, staying late again. "I want to understand the full workflow, not just the creative side." I gave him my login credentials, full access, because why wouldn't you trust the eager kid from Iowa who brought donuts? 1 month later, Friday evening, 7:45 p.m., the team was at our usual happy hour spot, this dive bar called Richard's, where they didn't judge you for ordering shots at 5:30 on a Tuesday. Trevor was buying rounds with what he called his intern budget, insisting it was to thank us for the mentorship. After a few drinks, the stories started flowing like they always did. But Trevor had this way of asking questions that made you want to tell him everything. Rachel talked about hitting rock bottom 3 years ago, woke up in my own vomit on the bathroom floor. My roommate called the intervention that saved my life. "You're so brave," Trevor said, those wide eyes full of admiration. "Do you still go to meetings?" Monica, our account manager, vented about her ex-husband. "The restraining order expires next month. He's already messaging me from fake accounts." "That must be terrifying," Trevor said. "Does he know where you work now?" James confessed the plagiarism incident from his first agency job 10 years ago. "Just one campaign. I was desperate, about to lose my apartment. Nobody knows except you guys." "Did anyone from that agency move to Chicago?" Trevor asked, so innocently. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry at how obvious it was he was building dossiers on all of us. I watched him excuse himself to the bathroom, phone in hand. Through the bar's mirror, I could see him in the hallway, typing rapidly, not texting, taking notes. Detailed notes about our vulnerabilities, our secrets, our weaknesses. When he came back, he ordered another round, raised his beer, and said, "To the best mentors an intern could ask for." We all clinked glasses. Rachel actually teared up. 3 months later, she'd relapse because of what Trevor did. James would lose his job. Monica's ex would show up at the office. And me? I'd lose everything I'd spent 15 years building. All because we trusted the wrong farm boy from Iowa. 6 weeks in, Tuesday morning, 9:15 a.m. Strange things started happening. Subtle enough that we blamed coincidence at first. Rachel found an anonymous note on her desk. "Saw you at Binny's buying wine last night. Thought you should know people are watching." She hadn't bought alcohol in 3 years. Hadn't even been to Binny's. But it rattled her someone was trying to make her paranoid about her sobriety. James got a LinkedIn message from a profile with no photo. "Interesting how similar your Kellogg's campaign was to that Brazilian ad from 2009. Wonder if your current employer knows." Monica's ex-husband suddenly knew which hotel we'd booked for the upcoming Denver conference. He sent her a message. "See you in Colorado." Looking back, the precision of it should have been obvious. Each attack targeted exactly what would destabilize that person most. Meanwhile, Trevor was becoming indispensable. He was handling our social media, organizing client files, even sitting in on calls with junior clients. "Just taking notes," he'd promise, that Iowa smile never wavering. But he wasn't just taking notes. He was building relationships with the junior brand managers, the 20-something marketing coordinators who felt ignored by us senior creatives. He'd add them on Instagram, comment on their stories about weekend brunches and music festivals, build this parallel network we didn't even know existed. Kevin, the 24-year-old brand manager at Midwest Motors, our biggest client, started asking for Trevor specifically. "He gets our demographic," Kevin would say. I found Trevor in my office after hours that Tuesday, sitting at my computer. "Oh," he jumped up, looking genuinely startled. "Just uploading those session recordings to the shared drive like you asked." I hadn't asked, but Trevor's face was so earnest, so apologetic, that I assumed I'd forgotten. "Sorry, Alex, I should have waited for you. I just wanted to get them organized before tomorrow's presentation." Who gaslight their boss while stealing their passwords? This kid, apparently. 2 months in, August 3rd, 2:30 p.m. Our biggest client, Midwest Motors, $5 million account, bread and butter of our agency, threatened to pull out. Kevin, their junior brand manager, sat across from us in the conference room, not making eye contact. "We're concerned about agency stability and ethics." "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. "We've heard Rachel might be drinking again. James has plagiarism in his past. Monica's personal drama could affect her work." The room went silent. How the fuck would a client know these things? Carol, our owner, was turning purple. Where did you hear this? It's just in the industry, Kevin said vaguely. People talk. Trevor raised his hand like he was still in college. Maybe I could talk to Kevin? We're around the same age. He might open up to me. They went to the coffee shop across the street. An hour later, Trevor came back looking like a hero. Kevin wants a fresh perspective on the campaign, he announced. I've been working on something in my spare time, just practice, but maybe it could help. He pulled up a fully formed campaign on his laptop. It was brilliant. Used insights none of us had thought of, social strategies that only someone Kevin's age would conceive. The tagline was perfect, drive your generation. The client loved it. Trevor had saved the account. How long have you been working on this? I asked. Oh, just noodling around after hours, he said. I studied all your past campaigns, learned your process, then tried to apply it myself. Looking back, having a complete campaign ready for our biggest client should have been the reddest flag in a communist parade. But we were too relieved to question it. Trevor was the hero. We took him out for drinks, toasted his success, shared more stories we shouldn't have. That night, he recorded everything. August 15th, 11 p.m. I was working late, trying to figure out why our client list was suddenly ghosting us, when my computer started acting possessed. Files opening and closing on their own, cursor moving without me touching anything. I called IT, panicking. Someone's accessing my machine remotely. They pulled the logs. Someone had been using my credentials to access the system at 4 a.m., multiple mornings, always from inside the office. I checked security footage. There was Trevor, clear as day, at various desks throughout the week. But the footage was partially corrupted, perfectly edited to hide what he was actually doing. The next morning, I confronted him in the conference room. Trevor, we need to talk about the security footage. His face crumpled instantly. Full tears, hands shaking, the works. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to learn. I couldn't sleep, so I'd come in early to study everyone's work. He was sobbing now, shoulders shaking. I used the passwords people had on sticky notes. I know it was wrong, but this internship is everything to me. My mom would be devastated if I got fired. I actually found myself comforting him. Me, comforting the guy who'd been breaking into our computers. Please don't fire me, he begged. I'll never do it again. I'll stay late, work weekends, anything to make it up to you. I gave him another chance. Because I'm an idiot who believed in second chances and redemption arcs and all that bullshit. Thank you, Trevor said, wiping his tears. You won't regret this. I left the conference room feeling like I'd done the right thing, giving this kid from Iowa another shot. What I didn't see was Trevor's tears drying instantly once I left. Didn't see him pull out his phone and text someone, Phase 3 complete. They suspect nothing. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry at how easily he played me the tears, the shaking, the perfect portrait of a desperate kid who'd made a mistake. 3 days later, our entire world would implode, and Trevor would be the one lighting the match. August 20th, Monday morning, 8 a.m. I walked into the office to find chaos. Rachel was crying at her desk. James was on the phone with what sounded like a lawyer. Monica was nowhere to be found. Carol, our owner, pulled me into her office. 4 clients just fired us, all before 9 a.m. They're all going to some agency called Next Generation. Never heard of it, I said, my stomach already sinking. It was incorporated 2 weeks ago, Carol continued. And Trevor didn't show up today. First time he's missed. By noon, we'd pieced together the nightmare. Trevor had been meeting with our clients for weeks, but not as our intern, as the founder of Next Generation. He'd pitched them using our strategies, our creative briefs, our proprietary research that he'd photographed during those late nights. But legally, just different enough to avoid a lawsuit, changed just enough words, altered just enough designs. Kevin from Midwest Motors called me personally. Trevor showed us everything. Rachel's drinking problem, James's plagiarism, Monica's stalker situation. He said you guys were falling apart, that he could deliver the same quality without the baggage. Those were private conversations, I said, feeling sick. He had recordings, Alex. Video of Rachel talking about buying vodka. James admitting to stealing campaigns. You discussing your ADHD medication. Who records their coworkers' mental health struggles to steal their clients? Seriously, who does that? By 3 p.m., Rachel had relapsed. I found her in the bathroom with a bottle of vodka, 3 years of sobriety, destroyed in 3 hours. Monica's ex showed up at the office. Trevor had been feeding him information about her schedule. Security had to escort him out. James got an email from Adweek asking about the plagiarism story, wanting a comment for their exposé. Every vulnerability Trevor had collected, he'd weaponized simultaneously. Every innocent question was reconnaissance. I said to Carol, the full picture finally clear. Every late night was theft. Every moment of fake vulnerability was just ammunition gathering. Carol's face was stone. We're ruined. She wasn't wrong. August 21st, 10 a.m. I went into full investigation mode, pulling up everything from Trevor's agency laptop. He thought he'd cleared it, but I knew recovery software from my paranoid days after a previous hack. What I found destroyed any remaining faith I had in humanity. Trevor had installed keyloggers on everyone's machines during his first week. Hidden in a font update he'd helpfully offered to install for everyone. These new fonts will make our presentations pop, he'd said. He had everyone's passwords, personal emails, even Monica's therapy appointment notes that she'd typed up for insurance, Rachel's AA sponsor's contact information, James's divorce lawyer communications. But then I found something that made my blood freeze. Emails to someone called Richard Matthews. That name. Why did I know that name? I dug through our ancient filing system, the paper records Carol insisted on keeping. Found it in a box labeled Founding Documents. Richard Matthews, co-founder of Velocity Creative, forced out 15 years ago after embezzling $200,000. I ran to Carol's office, showed her the emails. Her face went white as printer paper. Richard always said he'd get revenge, she whispered. He blamed me for ruining his life, but I didn't think. I never thought he'd use his son. Looking back, the elaborate con suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't random destruction. This was targeted revenge. I kept digging. Found a photo from the agency's 5-year anniversary party, back when everything was still optimistic. There was young Richard, and next to him, a kid who looked exactly like Trevor, maybe 7 years old, holding a juice box, wearing a Velocity Creative t-shirt that went down to his knees. Trevor Matthews wasn't even his real name. It was Trevor Richardson. Matthews was his mother's maiden name. The eager farm boy from Iowa, complete fiction. He was Richard's son, raised in Chicago, trained for this exact purpose. The university transcripts? Forged? The references? Fake numbers that went to burner phones? The social media profiles? Stolen photos from various sources? An entire identity crafted from digital fragments. Even his backstory, the mom working double shifts, the first-generation college student, all lifted from a real person's LinkedIn post about overcoming adversity. August 22nd, 2 p.m. I confronted Carol with everything, spreading the evidence across her desk like a detective in a bad cop show. He's done this before, I said, showing her what I'd found. 3 other agencies in 2 years. Gray Associates in Milwaukee, Fusion Creative in Detroit, Spark Communications in Minneapolis. All companies that had somehow wronged Richard Matthews during his career. A creative director who'd testified against him. A partner who'd refused to hire him. An agency that had won a pitch against his startup. Each time, same playbook. Trevor shows up with a different last name, different backstory, same eager intern energy. Extracts information, destroys from within, disappears with clients. We tried calling Trevor. Number disconnected. His apartment? Fake address. The building didn't even exist. The emergency contact was another burner phone. We can't even sue him, Carol said, defeated. Trevor Richardson doesn't legally exist, and the recordings he has. That's when my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Don't even think about going public. I have 8 hours of recordings. Your entire team admitting to things that will end careers. Rachel drinking on the job. James's theft. Monica violating her restraining order by talking about her ex. You billing personal expenses to clients. Your choice. I realized we were trapped. Trevor or Richard through Trevor had enough blackmail material to destroy us even more thoroughly if we fought back. But then other agencies started reaching out, the ones Trevor had hit before us. They'd been silent out of shame, out of fear, but seeing us get destroyed gave them courage. Together we had patterns, we had evidence, we had a case. He can't blackmail all of us, said Janet from Gray Associates, not if we all go public together. We built a shared document, compiling everything. Photos of Trevor at different agencies with different names, the similar destruction patterns, the client theft techniques. We were going to expose the whole scheme. Finally, Trevor Richardson, Matthews, whatever his name was, would face consequences. September 1st, 9 a.m. I sat in what was left of our office, just me and Rachel now, the rest scattered to the wind. Most of our furniture had been auctioned off. I was typing on a laptop balanced on a cardboard box, composing the story for Adweek, when Trevor texted me directly. Don't. I have 8 hours of recordings. Your admission to ADHD medication abuse. Your creative process that borrows heavily from existing work. That time you billed a client dinner that was really your anniversary. Your choice. I stared at the message. Every word twisted just enough to make innocent things sound criminal. But then my phone started buzzing. Janet from Gray Associates, Marcus from Fusion Creative, Lindsay from Spark Communications, all getting the same threat, all deciding the same thing. Fuck him, Janet said on our conference call. He can't sue all of us. He can't blackmail all of us. Not if we go together. We went public simultaneously. 4 agencies across the Midwest, all posting at noon on September 3rd. LinkedIn, Medium, Adweek, even a coordinated Twitter thread. Every receipt, every pattern, every identity Trevor had used. The internet did what it does best, investigated everything. They found Trevor's real social media from high school, before he became his father's weapon. They found Richard Matthews's bitter blog posts about Carol from 2012. They even found the actress who'd helped Trevor practice his various personas. She came forward, said Richard had threatened her family if she didn't help. Trevor tried to sell Next Generation, our stolen clients packaged as a functioning agency, but no buyer would touch it once our story went viral. The clients started calling us, ashamed, asking to come back. We told them no. Trevor and Richard disappeared with about $400,000 they'd already extracted. Probably planning their next con, their next false identity, their next victim. But here's the thing about burning down agencies across the Midwest: you make enemies. Advertising is a small world, and everyone knows everyone. Trevor couldn't get hired anywhere. Richard's name was poison. They'd won the battle but lost the war. 6 months later, I ran into Kevin from Midwest Motors at a conference. We made a mistake, he said. Trevor talked a good game, but he couldn't deliver. Turned out he'd just been repackaging your ideas. We fired him after 3 weeks. I wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. Rachel and I rebuilt smaller. Phoenix Creative, yeah, not subtle, but we earned the right to be obvious about rising from ashes. Just us two, no interns, no eager young talent. We do good work for clients who value transparency over flash. The final scene that still haunts me. A year later, I was interviewing a potential junior designer. 23 years old, portfolio full of promise, eager to learn. Brought coffee without being asked. Had that same wide-eyed enthusiasm. I just want to learn everything, she said, pulling out a notebook. Would it be okay if I took notes? I studied her for a long moment, looking for tells, for signs, for anything that suggested she wasn't real. The position's been filled, I said. She looked confused, hurt, probably genuine, probably exactly what she seemed. But probably isn't good enough anymore. Trevor wasn't even Trevor. He was Richard Matthews's son, executing a 15-year revenge plan against the woman who'd exposed his father's embezzlement. The fake Iowa farm boy story, the mom working, double shifts all stolen from someone's real LinkedIn post. He'd done this to 4 agencies across the Midwest. Same playbook every time. Install keyloggers as font updates, record every vulnerability, weaponize everything simultaneously. Rachel relapsed after 3 years sober. Monica's ex found her. 7 careers destroyed for his father's revenge. The fact that Alex can't trust eager young talent anymore, turning away that probably genuine designer, that's the real victory for Trevor. He broke their ability to mentor. Speaking of elaborate revenge schemes, wait until you hear about Richard Brennan, who faked his own death and spent 6 months studying his employee's menstrual cycle to frame her for murder. My boss hired an actress to spend 3 weeks learning to be me, my walk, my coffee order, even how I touch my earring when I'm nervous, all to frame me for his fake murder. Yeah, welcome to my nightmare. I'm Samantha, and this is how I ended up in county jail for killing a man who was sipping wine in Montenegro. Thursday evening, November 7th, 8:43 p.m. at Apex Capital Management in Century City, Los Angeles. I was alone in the office, bathed in that specific shade of fluorescent light that makes everything look slightly green and everyone look slightly dead. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioning and my mechanical keyboard clicking as I reviewed quarterly reports that made my eyes water from boredom. That's when I found it timing discrepancies in our fund reporting. We were claiming to buy positions at 9 a.m., but the trades didn't clear until 4 p.m. Not fraud, just sloppy work that was costing us about 3% in tax efficiency. The kind of thing that makes accountants cry, but nobody else cares about. I emailed Richard Brennan, our 52-year-old founder who'd built Apex from his garage to managing $2.3 billion of other people's money. Hey Richard, found some timing issues in Q3 reports. Nothing major, but we should discuss Monday. I can fix it pretty easily. I attached my analysis, hit send, at 9:12 p.m., already mentally checking out for the weekend. Richard replied instantly, like, within seconds. Thanks, Sam. You're always so thorough. Let's definitely discuss Monday morning. Something felt off. Richard never replied that fast, usually took him hours to respond to anything, And he called me Sam. In 4 years, he'd never called me anything but Samantha. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag. Why did he want me working late that specific Thursday on those specific reports? But I was tired, had been staring at numbers for 11 hours straight. My brain was mush. I packed up, headed to the parking garage. Didn't notice Richard's Mercedes idling in the corner with the lights off. Didn't see him screenshot my email before deleting it from his inbox. Didn't know he'd already started building the trail that would lead to my arrest for his murder. Monday morning, November 11th, 9:15 a.m. Richard didn't show up for the partners meeting. Probably on his boat, someone joked. Richard had just bought a 60-foot yacht, been bragging about it for weeks. But then he missed the 10 a.m. call with our biggest client, the noon lunch with Goldman Sachs. By 2 p.m., his wife Patricia was calling the office, hysterical. He didn't come home all weekend. This isn't like him. He always texts, always. By 4 p.m., the police were in our conference room. Detective Morrison, this guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, started asking questions. When did you last see Mr. Brennan? Thursday night, I said. We exchanged emails about some reporting issues. Morrison's expression changed. What kind of issues? Just timing discrepancies, minor stuff, I can show you. Was there anything wrong with the fund? Any fraud? No, nothing like that, just sloppy accounting. Tuesday morning, I walked into absolute chaos. FBI agents swarming the office like ants on a dropped candy bar. They were downloading servers, boxing up files, treating everything like evidence. They pulled me into the conference room. 3 agents, all wearing the same navy suits like they'd shopped together. We need to see all your communications with Mr. Brennan. They opened my email on their laptop. There were messages I'd never seen before. From my account to Richard, dated last week. I know what you're doing, the Ponzi scheme. Pay me $5 million or I expose everything. You have 48 hours to transfer the money. If you don't pay, you'll regret it. My blood turned to ice water. I didn't write these. The lead agent, Thompson, just stared at me. They came from your IP address, your login credentials, your computer. Who framed someone for extortion using their own email? My boss, apparently. Wednesday, November 13th, 6:32 a.m. I woke up to pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. 5 FBI agents with a search warrant. They went through everything, my underwear drawer, my freezer, even my box of tampons, looking for evidence of a crime I didn't commit. Then one of them found it, an envelope in my desk drawer, tucked behind old tax returns. $50,000 cash, wrapped in bands I'd never touched. Retainer from Richard Brennan, written on it in what looked exactly like my handwriting. Except I didn't write it. I'd never seen that money before. I need to see your laptop, Thompson said. The browser history made me want to throw up. Searches for how to cut brake lines and untraceable poisons dated 3 days ago, times when I was asleep, according to my fitness tracker. But the searches were there, clear as day. Then they found the receipt, my credit card, used at AutoZone to buy a brake line cutting tool. The signature looked perfect, exactly like mine. Thompson's phone rang. He listened, his face getting grimmer with each second. They found Richard's car, he said. Bottom of Mulholland Drive, burned. My business card was in the front seat, partially burned, but still readable. Next to it, printed emails where I apparently threatened to end Richard if he didn't pay. The car showed evidence of brake tampering, the kind of tampering you'd do with a tool from AutoZone. Samantha Liu, Detective Morrison said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for the murder of Richard Brennan. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again. They arrested me for murdering a man who was very much alive, probably watching the whole thing unfold from a beach in Montenegro. As they led me out in handcuffs, my neighbors watching from their doorways, I kept thinking, Richard had orchestrated this perfectly. Every piece of evidence, every digital trail, every physical proof. He'd spent months planning my destruction, and I'd sent him the perfect trigger with that email about timing discrepancies, issues that, if investigated, would reveal his $400 million Ponzi scheme. I was going to jail for murdering a man who'd faked his own death, and I had no idea how to prove he was still alive. Thursday through Sunday, November 14th through 17th, Los Angeles County Jail. If you've never been in county lockup, let me paint you a picture. Concrete everything, a toilet with no seat, and a cellmate who kept asking if I'd really killed my boss because that's badass. My bail was set at $2 million. $2 million. My parents' house was worth maybe $600,000. My savings account had $8,000 and change. My public defender, Janet Park, showed up Friday afternoon, looking like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. She spread the evidence across the metal table between us, and even I had to admit, It looked bad. Security footage shows you entering Richard's house at 11:47 p.m. on November 8th, she said, sliding over a grainy printout. The person in the footage looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same nervous habit of touching my earring when I walked. Even wearing my favorite Patagonia jacket, the purple one I'd lost at the gym 2 weeks ago. I was on a Zoom call with my sister in Singapore until 1 a.m., I said. Check my laptop. They did. The call logs were deleted. That's impossible. I never delete anything. Janet looked at me with this expression I'd seen before, the one that said she thought I was guilty but would do her job anyway. Then she opened the financial analysis I'd found. Her expression changed completely. This isn't just timing issues, she said, studying my spreadsheet. This is a $400 million Ponzi scheme. Richard was using new investor money to pay returns to old investors. Looking back, finding that minor discrepancy was like pulling a thread that unraveled everything. If Richard's scheme was exposed, he'd face life in prison, Janet continued. But if he died or appeared to die, the insurance would pay out. Investors would get partial returns, and he'd disappear with the rest. She looked up at me. We need to prove Richard Brennan is still alive. Monday, November 18th, my parents mortgaged their house to make bail. Watching my 65-year-old father sign those papers while my mother cried quietly, that broke something in me. I was suspended from Apex, banned from the office, but I started investigating from my studio apartment in Koreatown. My friend Kevin from IT believed I was innocent mostly because he'd had a crush on me since I started at Apex. Richard was sloppy, Kevin said, pulling up browser history on his personal laptop. He researched everything on his work computer, thinking incognito mode made him invisible. The searches were terrifying in their specificity. Death consultants, dark web. Thailand plastic surgery for criminals. Montenegro citizenship by investment. How to fake dental records. Frame someone for murder steps. But the worst part was finding the private investigator's report. Richard had hired someone to study me for 6 months. 150 pages documenting everything about my life. My running route. Subject runs Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 a.m., same 3-mile loop through Griffith Park. My coffee order, oat milk latte, extra shot, always pays with Apple Pay. My passwords. The pie had sat behind me at coffee shops, watched me type, filmed my fingers on my keyboard in slow motion to capture every keystroke. Even my menstrual cycle was documented. Subject likely most emotional days, 23 through 26 of cycle. Optimal timing for frame. Who studies their employees' period to frame them for murder? This fucking guy. There's more, Kevin said, pulling up deleted emails. He hired an actress. Look, the casting call, female, Asian, 5'4", athletic build, must be able to mimic specific mannerisms. 3 weeks intensive training, 50,000 cash. The actress had spent 3 weeks learning to be me, practicing my walk, my laugh, the way I touched my earring when I was nervous. Richard had filmed me secretly for months to give her reference material. November 20th, 2:15 p.m. Kevin and I were in a Starbucks in Glendale, far from anyone who might recognize me as that woman who murdered her boss. He made one mistake, Kevin said, pulling up VPN logs on his laptop. Richard thought the company VPN made him anonymous, but I log everything. Paranoid habit from my cybersecurity days. The logs showed Richard researching plastic surgeons in Bangkok, downloading PDFs about facial reconstruction, studying before and after photos, all time-stamped weeks before he died. But look at this, Kevin clicked to another screen. He was messaging someone called The Architect. The Architect was a death consultant who charged $500,000 to make someone disappear completely. The messages detailed everything. Fake the death, frame someone trustworthy, leave enough evidence to convict but no body to examine too closely. Richard had been liquidating assets for months, converting everything to cryptocurrency, running it through tumblers and mixers, ending up in wallets that couldn't be traced back to him. $400 million, digitized and scattered across the blockchain. Here's the smoking gun, Kevin said. A private jet booking from Tijuana to Montenegro on November 9th, the day after he disappeared. The passenger name was Robert Brennan, creative, but the payment came from a crypto wallet that Kevin had traced back to Richard through 17 different transactions. Montenegro doesn't extradite to the US, I said, my heart sinking. Kevin nodded. Even if we prove he's there, he's untouchable. But then Kevin found something else. Security footage from a private airfield in Tijuana, obtained through, let's call it, creative methods. The timestamp, November 9th, 5:43 a.m. A man boarding a Gulfstream G650. He wore a hat and sunglasses. But the way he walked, that specific stride Richard had from an old skiing injury, was unmistakable. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again. He was boarding a private jet to his new life while I was being booked for his murder. "We have him," Kevin said. "This proves he's alive." But proving it to the FBI would be another matter entirely. They don't tend to believe evidence obtained through creative methods by suspended employees and IT guys with crushes. November 22nd, Thanksgiving Day, 4 p.m. I was at my parents' house in Pasadena, pretending to eat turkey while wearing an ankle monitor that beeped if I went near the property line. My aunts kept asking about my new bracelet until my mom started crying and everyone figured it out. My phone rang. Unknown international number. "Samantha, it's Patricia, Richard's wife, calling from God knows where. I need to see you. I know Richard's alive." We met at a Denny's in Riverside at midnight, the only place open on Thanksgiving where nobody would recognize us. Patricia looked like she'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Her perfectly blown-out hair was in a messy bun, her designer clothes replaced with sweats. "He's been planning this for 3 years, she said, sliding a USB drive across the sticky table. "I found this in his safe. I knew about the affairs, the gambling, but not this." The USB contained everything. Videos of Richard practicing my signature over and over until it was perfect. The actress, her name was Jennifer, rehearsing being me in their home gym, with Richard directing her like some psychotic film director. "Walk more nervous," he said in one video. "Samantha always looks like she's apologizing for existing." Who practices forging signatures while critiquing someone's walk? Seriously, who does that? But the worst video was Richard cutting his own brake lines while wearing latex gloves he'd stolen from my gym bag during a company basketball game. "There's more," Patricia said, pulling up her phone. "He's been emailing me from Montenegro, thinking I'm playing along." The emails were cocky, detailed. Photos of him post-surgery with his new face-nose job, chin implant, cheek fillers. He looked like a Real Housewife's third husband. He was sending Patricia coordinates, promising to bring her over once the heat died down. "He's planning to abandon me too," Patricia said, tears streaming, "take the insurance money and disappear with some 23-year-old he met online." Looking back, Patricia's rage was the best weapon we could have asked for. "I want that bastard to pay," she said. November 25th, 10 a.m. My lawyer, Janet, Patricia, and I sat across from FBI agents Thompson and Morrison in a federal building downtown. The evidence was spread across the conference table like the world's most depressing Thanksgiving leftovers. Thompson watched the videos, examined the emails, studied the flight records. His expression never changed. "This could all be fabricated after the fact," he finally said. "Deepfakes are getting very sophisticated." I wanted to scream. We had literal video of Richard faking his death, and this guy was worried about deepfakes. Patricia had an idea. "I'll respond to Richard's emails. Tell him I'm coming to join him." Richard took the bait immediately, sent detailed instructions for meeting in Podgorica, Montenegro's capital. Even included restaurant recommendations and told her to bring his favorite watch, the one he'd forgotten to wear when he died. "Montenegro doesn't extradite to the U.S., Thompson said. "Even if we confirm he's there, we can't touch him." That's when I remembered something. Richard's obsessed with his Rolex collection. He has this 1972 Submariner, never takes it off. It has a unique serial number, documented for insurance. Kevin helped me scan dark web marketplaces through Tor browsers and VPNs. 3 days later, we found it. Someone in Montenegro selling that exact watch, serial number, and everything. The seller's photos showed a hand wearing it, a hand with Richard's distinctive scar from when he'd tried to impress clients by sailing and ended up needing 17 stitches. Thompson finally believed us, but his hands were tied. Montenegro's a non-extradition country. He planned this perfectly. "So he just gets away with it?" I asked. "Unless he's stupid enough to leave Montenegro, yes." Patricia smiled then. This cold smile I'd never seen before. "He's not staying in Montenegro. He's planning to sail to Croatia next month. He wants to buy a house there." Croatia had an extradition treaty with the U.S. "How do you know?" Thompson asked. Patricia pulled up more emails. Richard detailing his plans, sending her real estate listings in Dubrovnik, asking her opinion on marble countertops versus granite. December 2nd, 6 a.m., Podgorica, Montenegro. I was there against every piece of legal advice I'd received, using the last of my credit to buy a ticket through Istanbul. Patricia was with me, wearing a wire the FBI had unofficially provided. The plan was simple. Patricia meets Richard, gets him on video, admitting everything. We needed concrete proof he was alive and had framed me, something that would hold up in court if we ever got him back to the U.S. The cafe overlooked the Adriatic Sea, all white tablecloths and Croatian wine. Richard was already there when Patricia arrived. Even with the surgery, you could tell it was him, the way he stirred his coffee counterclockwise, that specific laugh that sounded like a seal choking. I was across the street with a telephoto lens, live streaming everything directly to the FBI through an encrypted connection Kevin had set up. Did they convict her yet? Richard asked, not even greeting his wife properly. Trial starts next month, Patricia lied smoothly. Richard laughed. Poor girl. So smart with numbers, so dumb about everything else. Sending that email about the discrepancies, she basically signed her own arrest warrant. He kept talking, bragging about every detail. How he'd spent 6 months building the frame, finding Jennifer through a casting agency that didn't ask questions. How he'd studied my performance reviews to mimic my writing style. The menstrual cycle tracking was brilliant, he said. Actually proud of this. Timed everything for when she'd be most emotional. Female hormones are so predictable. Even typing this out now, I'm getting angry all over again. He was proud of weaponizing my biology against me. Patricia was perfect, asking just the right questions to get him to confess everything. The Ponzi scheme, the frame, the new identity, all of it. But then Richard stopped mid-sentence, staring at Patricia. Of course you're not really joining me, Pat. I know you're wearing a wire. The 2 bodyguards I hadn't noticed stood up from nearby tables. I knew the moment you contacted me, Richard continued, but I wanted to see you one last time. My heart stopped. We were blown. December 2nd, continued. Richard took Patricia's wire, crushed it under his heel like he was putting out a cigarette. I knew the moment you contacted me, he said calmly, but I wanted to see you one last time, to say goodbye properly. He stood up, gestured to his bodyguards. By tonight, Richard Brennan won't exist in any form. New identity, new face, new life. Even you won't be able to find me. He kissed Patricia on the forehead, this weirdly tender gesture that made my skin crawl. The insurance money's all yours, Pat. Consider it a divorce settlement. Then he walked away, bodyguards flanking him, disappearing into the narrow streets of Podgorica's old town. But here's the thing about being a 28-year-old who grew up with technology. I understood something Richard didn't. Modern phone cameras with telephoto lenses are incredibly powerful, and live streaming doesn't require a wire. I'd been broadcasting everything directly to the FBI since Patricia sat down. Richard's confession, his face post-surgery, his admission of the frame all captured in 4K resolution from my position across the cafe. We got it all, Kevin texted me. The FBI has everything. Within 2 hours, Interpol was involved. Montenegro might not extradite, but they don't like being used as a haven for American criminals either. They froze his accounts, revoked his newly purchased residency visa, gave him 72 hours to leave the country. Richard tried to run. Bought a fake passport from the wrong people. Turned out he'd made enemies in Montenegro's criminal underworld by flashing his wealth around, thinking he was untouchable. 3 months later, they found his body floating in the Adriatic. The real death he'd faked before, shot execution style, his fancy new face barely recognizable. The Montenegrin police ruled it a robbery gone wrong, case closed within a week. I was cleared of all charges in January. The attempted murder case collapsed like a house of cards once the FBI presented my live stream evidence. Apex Capital's insurance had to pay out a massive settlement for what I'd been through, 8 figures, enough that I'd never have to work for another narcissistic financier again. Patricia got the life insurance money from Richard's actual death. She sent me a postcard from Costa Rica 6 months later. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. He got what he deserved. I burned it immediately. Some secrets are better kept as ashes. The actress Jennifer spent 3 weeks learning to be Samantha, her walk, her coffee order, even how she touched her earring when nervous. Richard filmed Samantha secretly for months to give Jennifer reference material. All to frame a 28-year-old accountant who found a minor discrepancy that unraveled his entire Ponzi scheme. Richard's mistake? Not understanding that modern phone cameras with telephoto lenses don't need wires to livestream confessions. While he was crushing Patricia's wire under his heel like some movie villain, Samantha was broadcasting his entire confession in 4K to the FBI. He escaped to Montenegro thinking he'd won, only to get shot by the criminals he'd annoyed. Patricia's postcard from Costa Rica, he got what he deserved, feels like the only honest thing in this whole twisted story. And if you thought these workplace betrayals were insane, the next compilation takes it to a whole different level. Because what happens when the person destroying your life isn't a coworker or mentor, it's family. The blood relative who knows every weakness, every password, every secret you've ever shared. Click here to find out why, sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one sitting at your Thanksgiving dinner table.